Good evening and welcome to the Portsmouth Historical Society's Historic District Commission meeting for April 1st. Happy April Fools. Also, happy first night of Passover for all of those who are celebrating. We have a fairly long agenda tonight, but it wasn't quite long enough to split it up into two meetings, so we figured we'd just go ahead and get it all out of the way tonight, but I will try my best to keep the night moving. I'll introduce everybody here. I've got Dr. Dan Brown on my right.
Good evening.
Martin Ryan.
Good evening.
The Vice Chair, Margot Doring.
Hello.
I'm Reagan Rudig, the Chair. I've got Isaac Gilbo from the Planning Department.
Good evening.
Our City Council Rep, Kate Cook.
Good evening.
Joy Kurth. Good evening. And David Adams.
Good evening.
And we're missing our two alternates tonight who could not be here. So I don't think it should be a problem unless there are lots of recusals for any particular project, which I don't know about. So the board's action in these matters has been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or it will be deemed waived. All right, first up we have the approval of minutes from the March 4th meeting. Is there any discussion or any comments on the minutes? Okay. Yes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Chair votes aye. And then we have only 6 administrative approvals, so I will let Isaac take over here for that.
Thank you. So out of the 6, we do have a couple of items that we have recusals on, so I will take those first. We can vote on those individually and then come back for the remainder. The first item would be item number 4, which is 65 Washington Street, otherwise just known as Strawberry Bank, the collection of buildings and the property there.
Yep. And I will be recusing myself from that because I sit on the board, so I'm going to hand this over to Margot.
Thank you.
So the applicant here is seeking approval for the installation of a fence and gate. This would be for the area between 400 and 420 Court Street. The reason being is they had a passenger vehicle attempt to try to drive down there during an event, it not being as clearly marked. So just to make sure that that is definitely not an access point, they would like to have the gate and fence installation. I am so sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen. 1 second. There we go. My apologies. So this would be the area where the new fencing and gate would go. Over the years, there have been fences and gates moved in and around this area, so it's not that we haven't seen it before, but it hasn't been there for a while. And then there's also a request to remove a small portion of fencing as well. See those here. Like that's the end of the request. Does anybody have any specific questions on this particular application?
Anyone? Are you recused from any others, or should we just do this one?
Just this one.
Okay. All right. If there are no comments or questions, does anyone like to make a motion?
I move we approve this application as presented.
Seconded by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Vice Chair votes aye.
Okay, the second item that we have a recusal on is for item number 6, that is 134 Pleasant Street. So the applicant here is coming back to us for some changes to the overall design that relate to the rooftop deck and the elevator stair overrun. So they just have a couple of elevation changes that are highlighted. The penthouse has been expanded from our previous approval. It still sort of holds the same aesthetic and sort of overall shaping. They've just expanded that. And furthermore, they have had to add a kind of roof bump out to increase the height for the elevator and stair overrun. And so that would be visible, of course, from Pleasant Street itself on that facade. Are there any questions?
You're going to recuse yourself, or are you?
Yes, I'm going to recuse because I missed the first approvals, and I don't want any confusion around that.
Okay. Any comments?
This is not a small cupola.
No.
In scale, it's not. I mean, no, in scale, it's not overly large, but in terms of, I don't, you couldn't put one of those on my house. I mean, it's just big.
Yeah.
Does it seem all right to everybody?
The applicant is here if there are questions about the need for this, or how we kind of came to the idea of.
I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I'd love to hear the pitch.
Sure, please. I'm also uncomfortable with the size of it, and not because it's big, but because it very drastically changes the design that we had approved for this new building.
Good evening, Tracy Kozak, Arcove Architects. Thank you for taking the time tonight to consider this. The cupola on the new building in the back right is there for the elevator overrun, which is there to facilitate maintenance and equipment delivery and removal from the roof. So it's not an essential life safety feature. We do have a stair that will fit under the hipped roof itself. So we would like to have it if possible. If it seems too much, we would be willing to potentially make it just a simple box like we saw at Treadwell. The precedent for that is the boiler house at City Hall, right in the lot where you have a hipped roof with a clear story cupola on top. So that's where this came from. Happy to answer any questions.
Any other thoughts?
Can we see the roof plan again?
Yes. This would be the new proposed roof plan.
Yeah. It is to the very back of the site.
The three dormers on the left are also new. They face the drive-through, so you can't really see them from a public way, but I do want to point out those are new.
This is on the portion of the building that's right on the property line?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's about 14 feet from the property line on the north side. There's a drive aisle. That's the exit lane from the drive-through that goes between our proposed building and the abutting property. I do have some additional view angles if you care to see them.
I would just say that given the fact that it is a functional piece and isn't needed for the elevator override, it doesn't bother me as much knowing that it is kind of stands out by itself a bit, but given that it's at the back of the building and it's diminished by where it's located, I can live with it.
To continue the dialogue here, it's on the back of the building, but really, it's almost as close to the street, Pleasant Street, as you can get on this building. It's, I don't know, just give it a number of 16 feet. It's also 14 feet from the neighbor's fence, and I don't usually get this deep into it, but this is a striking thing to happen for the view of the neighbor who's sharing this fence with them. It's also, it's a topic, it makes the building look more like a gargantuan party favor than a building in the historic district. I just think it's it's just a little too colorful. I mean, no, I'm kidding, a lot too colorful for the building. How much of that height do you really need as an overrun? You're already into the attic.
So we can make it shorter with just a flat box top, and I did bring a view without it entirely, which would be no elevator overrun, but if it comes to that.
Would you share those?
Can I hand those out? Yeah.
Yes, of course. I think with no elevator overrun is just the design that we had approved, correct? Okay.
Almost.
It concerns me that it is really flashy. It also is on the highest point of the
We can share.
lot, so that it is even taller.
We can share.
Those are two different ones. The one's
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Not to get too far ahead, but have you repitched the roof of that portion of the building to make up for the need for height?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is a little steeper than the other roofs, but that pitch is to accommodate the fire stair, which is required by code. So that's what that is. And that's the box.
Thank you for being prepared for this.
So again, two options. We'd love to get the cupola up there, or the box top would be fine too, actually, your preference. If there's no overrun up there at all, it just means we don't have the elevator access for maintenance. We are more committed to having your approval on the penthouse width, so that roof on the left, the penthouse, it got wider, not deeper. And it is, I think, 14 inches taller than previous because of that extra width and the pitched roof. It's still 7 feet below the maximum allowed, and that's shown on the elevations. The new building on the right, as I mentioned, also has the 3 dormers facing the drive-through, and the slate roof, that square box underneath the cupola we're talking about, that has moved to the right. It used to be tucked in the corner, and we pushed it to the center between the 2 wings. So that shift is a little bit different. The shape is the same, it's just shifted.
I'll ask is, are there any concerns about the penthouse on the existing building? Having it get larger?
I assume that it got larger due to developing the design.
Once we got into the floor plan details and having to we need a horizontal egress and the travel distances and the apartment door entrances, it pushed the apartments apart. It's still the same number of apartments, it's just they're arranged differently inside.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, and I agree with Dave. I think that this really changes the relationship of this building to its similar neighbors. However, I'm looking at I guess this is the south part of the roof. It has already a protruding structure there, correct? It's,
On the south of the cupola?
yeah,
Yeah, it's lower than the peak of the hip roof, and it's a little, like, 4 foot by 7 foot wide
okay.
section where the door comes out of the fire stair.
I guess what I'm asking is there a way to accomplish what you need by making a similar dormer over that stair that would be large enough to encompass a smaller elevator?
That's the
Space.
box top option I passed out. Yeah,
Is this box top?
yes, that's the
that's-
elevator overrun. Unfortunately, we need
No.
the hoistway beam and
Right.
all that.
Yeah, I can't support something that large. It completely changes the relationship of these 3 buildings with each other, the brick buildings.
I think it's an awkward thing to try to put something on top of a hip roof, is really what it is. So,
I'll just pipe in.
I don't know what to
I
say.
echo the sentiment. I
So-
really loved this design. I shared that, but
Okay.
that little addition changes the whole perspective of this, especially walking down Pleasant Street. This is what you will encounter. So I also wouldn't support that.
So it'd be convenient for the applicant, but the applicant's willing to get rid of the elevator overrun entirely and just do the flat top with a stair and no elevator, if that's the wish of the commission.
So that building remains unchanged from the original approval?
The three dormers facing the drive-through and that chunk where that hip roof is under what will be a flat-topped hip is shifted closer to Pleasant. It used to be tucked right against the drive-through, but it's the same shape.
it seems to probably be more palatable at this point, and if you still, continue design, really want that elevator and can find something that might be more acceptable, you
Yep.
can always come back, but.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Just a quick question, what does option 2 represent?
Option 2 is that box top elevator overrun, the simplified elevator overrun, which I'm hearing is also too big, so. Oh, I'm sorry, no, wait. Option
No,
1
that's
is the
option
box
1.
top. Option 2 is nothing. It's just a hipped roof with a flat top.
Sort of what we're suggesting.
All right, so this would be, stipulation for this one would be that it would be option 2 with no elevator overrun. Everything else seems fine.
I'll make a motion to approve with the stipulation of no elevator overrun.
Second,
I'll second it.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Chair votes aye. All right.
I thought this is part of administrative approvals.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, new rules, got it.
Because she recused herself.
Yes. All right, so now we can, if there are no other recusals, we'll do the rest.
Yes, so that will bring us just back up to the top. Item number 1, which is 96 State Street. This project was before us a few months ago. What they would like to do here, number 1 is to actually change the trim that we approved as wood to a composite material for around the replacement windows. And then the other addition that they would like to make after figuring out that the chimneys are not entirely feasible for venting is to actually install an additional 12-inch duct vent on the top of the roof. They would also be removing one that's sort of existing there, and then there's one that would just be replaced in kind that's, again, existing. And they have the roof plan there to show where those would be located. Does anyone have any further questions on this particular one? Okay. So that will bring us to number 2, which is 111 Gate Street. As you all know, this project has been before us for admin a couple of times for some minor changes in the field. This last change would be to extend an existing water board that is on the home. This would match closely to some of the neighboring properties, and it would kind of just finish off the remainder of the home and the improvements that they're doing there.
Yes.
May I just speak to this? The house has a historic water table in the front. How old it is, it looks pretty darn old. It's typical of that heavy element, blah, 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 7 inches tall or something to that effect. On the right-hand side of the building, as you look at it from the street, there's an addition, not contemporaneous with the construction of the house, but soon after, built in many of the same ways and decorated with pieces of the house. It has a water table, but it's another kind of historic Georgian era water table, which is a plank set at a like 30-degree angle, sticking about 6 inches away from the building rather than up the side of it. And the two of those occur in many buildings at the same time. It's not, I'm not certain, I have never been in the 18th century, but they occur many places at the same time. Kieran Walsh House has two different kinds of water table. The Lord House right behind this on Manning Street has two different kinds of water table. The better one, so to speak, is the plank against the face of the building, and the minor one is that angled piece sticking off to the side. This building not only has one of those thinner pieces on the right-hand most side, but on the left-hand side of the building, you notice that there's a 2-inch gap at the bottom, which is where one of those angles sticking away. So, my point, we've got some original pieces. I can't see the process of unifying the building with a thing that never existed. When we've got some of those original examples there, I think this should be rethought. I think they can do better. That's my thought.
Do we have yes, would you like to come speak to this?
Good evening, Amy Dutton Home in Kittery, and this is Joey from Haven Hill Builders. I brought Joey along because he's got his head wrapped in this a little bit more than I do. And I had a feeling there would be a conversation about this, so do you want to address his questions?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the two different type of water tables that he was describing, we weren't looking at getting rid of the one on the right side of the building on that small addition, purely because of its function, because the foundation sticks out about 4 or 5 inches past the sheathing plane, so of course that's kicking water away from the building. So I noted that here on those plans, the idea was to keep that there, but
Excuse me, do you mind scrolling down? There you go. Can we use maybe zoom in? I don't know if you can. Here we go. More on the photos that, it's on the left side. There we go. Thank you.
yeah, the bit of unification was to bring what's happening on the front around to essentially this side, which is the driveway side on the left side of the house, where you have the clapboards and no mud sill detail at all, along with the little mudroom bump out that we rebuilt in the same footprint that was there. And the idea with that is that these clapboards were put on at some time in the 80s, is what I can tell with the Tyvek that's behind it. So yeah, that was our idea, was to bring it around to unify it, but also leave what's happening on the small bump out as well. So not change that.
Is your point that there wasn't a larger water table on that side, and that's why you want to put one there?
On this side here?
On the side toward the driveway?
Okay, this point was that there's just nothing there currently at all, just these, just the clapboards that were done. So I don't know if there was one there at one point in time and it was taken
Well,
off.
you brought a photograph with you tonight. It's up on the screen right at the moment on the far left that shows the corner board on that corner of the building landing on top of the 6.5-inch water table and then passing beside it down, just like there was a 2-inch plank sticking away from the building kind of water
right
table.
underneath it, yeah.
So to me, regardless of the clapboards, which I agree have been replaced in some manner in a historic pattern, but they didn't change the water table, the corner board, and so we have a existence of a different kind of water table. Again, this is a unique condition that happens not everywhere in town, but I know that there are a number of them. This building had 2 different kinds of water tables.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, my biggest hope with the change here is that you can see, like in that picture that you're describing there, is that currently there is no flashing detail on that side from the sheathing and siding substrate down over the foundation that's popping out, which I have found in other locations we've had rotted sills, existing sills. So my biggest hope here in all of it is to be able to properly manage the bulk water.
Well, but putting a wider plank in would also help with the problem of water getting to the top of your foundation.
Yeah, definitely. And another thought was when that came off was being able to use like lead from the sheathing substrate to cap over our foundation.
Pretty
so
common.
That was kind of a big hope to bring around the entire building.
So how do we get out of this?
I think whatever you're comfortable with, Dave, I think we're fine with that. I think I'll address that later. As far as the water table goes, we are concerned
I brought
about
the problem
water.
up, but I think, could you see your way to putting a sloping, low water table on the driveway side, and then follow your plan of putting in a replica of the broad vertical piece on other new portions of the building to help tie them together?
So,
He's saying like the driveway side here.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing the front on the side, or doing the other side on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Doing this, the sloped.
Doing the
seems- yeah.
sloped on the driveway side.
That seems to be what the language of the wood, of the bud sills.
Where's the harm in
will.
that?
I think that's
As what we see is currently there, so just trying to carry that around.
on the sides, on the gable sides, because, I mean, I can see the logic historically is obvious, most of the water's coming down, right? Down the walls, so you shed it out, so, yeah, I think that would be fine. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great on that driveway side because
Yeah.
you have, similar to that addition, you have the foundation protruding a little more than you do with the brick, you know,
Yeah.
with the fieldstone, so.
The house across the street from you has that
Completely.
foundation problem on all sides. It's like they bought the wrong size frame and had to struggle to solve the problem, and they used that other water table to cover over the foundation.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great solution, and I think, yes, great eye.
Good.
With the corner board dropping, so yeah,
Yeah.
I see that, yeah.
All right, good, win.
If we could also I just want to verify this because we are about to side that. We've been working on the back, but we're about to come around this side. And if you look at that side of the driveway side, I mean, what they average, there's like 2.5 inches weather, there's like a 4-inch weather, I mean, it's kind of,
The front is very uniformed in being around 3 inches, where the gable ends are kind of all over the place, you know. But not like in a typical pattern where, you know, it starts small at the bottom and works its way up. It just seems from, you know, the foundation to the gable, so to speak, the peak, the weathering is all over the place. So, but on the side where we're not really re-siding the gables completely, we are just patching in around where we are putting in new windows and trim. I mean, on those sides, the idea was to just follow what is existing when we patch back in and when we do re-side the front and do windows, going with the existing 3-inch weathering and, you know, mimicking the mud sill that's our water table.
I just want to make sure we're on board with all that.
All good.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions or issues on it? Would you like, can you articulate a stipulation for this?
Sure. The water tables that they are going to replace on the building will be done in the manner of that's on the street side, except for the portion that goes down side of the house by the driveway. And that will be a angular sticking away from the building, 2x6, rather than an upright 2x6. And they're speaking of the clapboards on the driveway side, and what he's asking to do is to regularize the exposure of them because they've been patched a number of times over the years. Both things seem reasonable to me.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that will move us along to item number 3, 41 to 43 and 45 Market Street. These were projects that were brought before us during COVID era times. A lot of the work had been permitted and started and is complete. A few of the items never got a permit issued, and therefore, since the actual approval was several years ago, that those portions have lapsed. They are just coming back to ask if they can simply move forward with the remaining projects that were approved. For 41 and 43 Market Street, that would be to add vertical copper gutter and disengage from, or add new vertical copper gutter and disengage from the westerly buildings. They are hoping to fix the limestone band material, fix the limestone sill material, and then just clean up the brick facade as needed. The additional item that they would like to also replace is the existing snow belt. It is currently a metal snow belt. They would like to just replace that, essentially in kind, just with the classic bronze color. And then at 45 Market Street, just next door, they have requested, let's see. Oh, they are actually removing the previously approved recessed rear deck due to framing within the roof, so that part will go away. And then they would like to add 2 new skylights opposite of where the recessed roof deck was going to be. And that just shows the removal of that rear deck there.
Any questions?
Okay. So that will bring us to our last administrative approval item for this evening, which is at 254 Newcastle Avenue. The applicant here is seeking approval for a condenser and line sets. The location of the condenser unit will be right behind the existing fencing, so you will not be able to see that from any public way. They do have some proposed line sets that will need to be run on the exterior of the home. These will service the first and second floors, and they've sort of drawn out a minor just site plan of what that would look like. And we can they did say that the conduit lines will be covered. We can stipulate that they match the siding, the color of the siding, or the trim, whichever it's adjacent to.
Isaac, I found this a little interesting because normally the condenser unit is quite close to where the line sets run. And in this particular case, it's all the way behind the building. So I don't see anything running from the back corner of the building along the water table and then up on this side of the building. They just seem to be randomly placed, but none of them seem to actually connect to the condenser itself. So I'm a little confused about that. And in my drive-by, I noted that the corner of the house that appears to be hidden by this telephone pole is actually extremely visible as you drive by, because there's a lot of times when the pole is not actually hiding this work that will be here. So I'm a little confused as to how the placement ends up here, with the condenser being all the way in the back and no connection, unless they just didn't mark the connections.
Sure, and that very well could be the case. I'm not sure if we have the applicant in the audience at all. I know a lot of times being an admin approval, sometimes folks aren't here.
I think it's quite possible that the lines from the condenser run through the basement, and then, but in order to get to the upper floors, they
They're
have to come out.
popping them out.
I can certainly, if it would be more comfortable to the commission, we could postpone this item and I could get more information on exactly how the line sets will come around from the back of the house, and then if they have to run through the basement and then back out.
I mean, I think that they've given us the plan, so this is what we accept. And if it has to be different, then it will be different.
Can we, just imagining that they don't have to tell us how the line set's getting to where it's getting, I guess, really. You're fine. But how is that one that goes up the corner of the building? The fun part of that is missing and being covered by the telephone pole. It somehow goes up and then turns parallel to the street and goes over 1.5 feet, and then somehow goes up and then swings back again. I don't understand where it's going or how many colors that would have to be painted to make it look like it was not there. I'm skeptical about how enjoyable this is going to be. Wonder if there's another way to get this done without driving through the cellar and all of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's worth asking if that part at least can be simplified somehow, so that it's not wrapping around so many different places. So, sure, we can, if everyone's agreeable to postpone it for a month.
More info. Yep.
Okay.
Well, I will just kind of quickly just run through the admin approvals that we've had that we did not have recusals for. So we had item number 196 State Street, did not have a stipulation there. Item number 2, 111 Gate Street, we have the stipulation that Dave made. I'm confident that our minute taker has that word for word. Item number 3, 41 to 43 and 45 Market Street. Looks like there were no stipulations on that particular project. And then item number 5, it looks like we are requesting to postpone to just get more information regarding the line sets that go sort of snake up and around that corner of the home.
Any other comments? Can I get a motion?
So moved?
And seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, chair votes aye. All right. Thank you, Isaac. We've gotten through our admin approvals. We have 6 public hearings, but we do have one work session that has a request to postpone. So let me read that out. It is the work session Old Business requested by Christopher W. Avery, Revocable Trust, owner for property located at 30 Walden Street, wherein permission is requested to allow new construction. And I'm assuming that they would like a postponement of 1 month?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to postpone this for 1 month.
Need a second?
Second?
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, chair votes aye. All right, so let's start with public hearing number 1, petition of Alden Development LLC, owner for property located at 110 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, reconstruct second floor roof deck, reconstruct the privacy wall, replace windows, add shutters, repoint masonry as needed, and repair and replace wood sills and trim as needed, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 53 and lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts. So, hello.
Good evening. Mark Giannini with Portsmouth Architects. I'm joined with the applicant, Sean Peters. I do have a slight question / request with the application. Just since this past weekend, one of the front windows at the ground level that create the storefront was broken. So we were wondering if we could add to this existing application, since we were going to be here, replacement of those windows.
Okay.
And I do have a few copies of a paper handout just for that piece.
Okay.
If I can bring that up.
Sure. Pass that down and I'll let Isaac have.
So, as mentioned, well, I'll get back to the storefront of the window here. But the majority of the project is taking place in the rear of the property, where we're looking to replace an existing roof deck that's on the second floor. If we go to the second page, the 2 bottom images here show you the existing roof deck. The condition of it is it's in pretty rough shape at the moment. It's actually had some repairs because railings previously with the previous owner were actually falling off the building, so it's had some repairs. But the roof deck itself would be replaced in kind as far as size goes. We're also looking to replace the privacy wall that you see on the left there, which is approximately 8 feet tall. And then we're proposing replacing the door that goes out to the second floor there to the deck. And then the third floor, the upper left window, which, let's see the pointer out here, but in the upper left of the property, this is looking at the bottom left picture, there's an existing window that goes out to existing landing and stair that's used for egress and fire escape. We're looking to expand that, replace the window and expand it to a door. It would be a shorter door. wouldn't be a full height just because it's the roof eave and what's allowed. But then we're also looking to slightly expand that landing so there's kind of a small outdoor area for that unit that's on the third floor. So the third floor landing area would be expanded to approximately 5 feet by 12 feet. And then the footprint of the existing second floor roof deck would be replaced in kind as far as size. If you go down to the next sheet, this is a floor plan. You can see in the bottom left the existing door that would get replaced. And then on the right there, the window would be replaced with a door. And that actually includes the size on it. So it would be 34 inches wide by 78 inches tall. So almost full size, but slightly shorter. Moving on to the next sheet, our materials and some profiles. So the privacy wall that I mentioned, as it's shown there in the middle left, or middle bottom, it would be a horizontal wood slat, either in cedar or mahogany. Again, it would run all along the side edge of that, the property line and the existing deck, so replacing in kind as far as location and size. We're proposing the TimberTech Impressions railings to go around the deck and as well as down the stairwell, and then TimberDeck decking itself. So in the bottom left here is an image of another property using the same materials and some of the same trim profiles that the applicant just recently completed over on Daniel Street. Other parts of the project include some repointing on the east side of the property, and then also on the front of the building, we're looking to add shutters to the second and third floor windows. We've got historical images and showing that shutters used to be there, as well as existing pintles that are there now. So we'd be either reusing some of the hardware that's there or replacing in kind. And that brings us to the last piece, which was the replacement windows, which again is not in the packet, but the handout that I have there. Isaac, if you can scroll back up to the photos though. You can see the existing windows, kind of, maybe one more up, sorry. So on the first floor, there's currently 2 storefront windows that are roughly 60 by 85. The existing windows are a true divided light. So we'd be looking, since they've been, the damage that occurred, basically someone went through or partially went through the window. So it took out a bunch of the muttons that were there, as well as breaking the glass. So we're proposing replacing the windows, both of them, with an Anderson Eagle. So it'd be an aluminum clad window, and then in the same size, and then the same configuration of a 16 divided lights. We would have the mutton profile would either be a 5/8 or 3/4 to match what's there, and would be a true simulated divided light. And then the trim around those 2 windows would be either reused or replaced in kind with a wood trim. So I think that is all of the different items.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Do you know the date of these storefront windows?
I do not know the date of these storefront windows.
They are not replacement windows.
No, those are not. The rest of the windows on that front facade are replacement windows. The image from the historic survey done by the advocates in the 80s, I think showed the same windows that are there now. But the front, that area of the building has been modified at some point. Either there were different window configuration or a larger storefront there at one point. Basically everything from the sign band down and from the left corner of the building to just before the main entrance, that's all been infilled with a different brick that's a slightly different color. If you can zoom in, Isaac, it's actually pretty noticeable in the photograph. So they aren't original to the building, but.
I'm not sure that photo's good enough to really see it, but you can definitely see it in the handout that you
Yes.
gave us.
So you can see just where that jacket is hanging there. That's where the transition starts, where they infilled. So there's a different brick, different
like-
color.
There's potentially another doorway there even.
Yeah, and that brick infill goes all the way to the corner, and again, from the cyan band down. So either there was a larger storefront there at some point or a different window configuration.
Okay. Any questions about the deck? Seems like you're essentially replacing what's there with an upgrade,
Yes.
at least of the privacy fence and the deck railing. Yes.
I do have a question about the privacy fence. What is that blocking from the neighboring building? You can't tell from the images.
They have an existing rear entrance, so they have kind of a sidewalk. I don't know if there's pavers or anything, but they have a walkway, I should say, between the side of their building, between the two properties. And they have a back entrance that's kind of back there right now, which Fezziwigs uses for some storage of equipment and stuff out back.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, I'd like to open this up to the public. If there is anyone from the public wishing to speak to, for, or against this application? Seeing no one rise, is there anyone online? Okay. All right, let's close the public hearing, and I'd like to have a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve this application as presented, as extended.
Any second? Anyone?
Second.
Okay.
I believe that this will help maintain the special character of the district, and I think it will not only conserve property values, but to add modern features into, modern solutions into the existing fabric of our community. I want to mention the reduction of mass of the screening wall on the left-hand side as we look at the rear of the building. And I also, I think this is a classic, a good move in terms of the balusters that he's referring to. The railing and balusters for the deck are much lighter, by probably 50%, will allow it to look a little bit more airy rather than a frat house special. And the change in the windows in front, I can't be certain that these windows were the ones that were installed after the big storefront was removed, but they're very, very similar in terms of the size of the mullion and the pattern. I don't think that there's any reason to say that these shouldn't be put in.
Thank you. I will note, sorry that I didn't catch this earlier, that the door that's being proposed on the rear, there's no spec for it in terms of what it's made of or anything. So if you have that, great. If not, you can just give it to Isaac.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't specify a material. We did show a profile of it on the last sheet, but I mean, I guess fiberglass would be what would be preferred by the applicant, but.
I think that's fine, just whenever you do figure out some specifications for it, just
Yeah, we can submit a cut sheet on
make
it.
sure it gets in there. Okay.
Similar to that, because the windows were added, I would like an admin approval on the specifications for that, particularly to be sure that these are not going to end up being thicker with smaller lights than we already have. I mean, these are beautiful, very light-giving, delicate windows, and I'd like to be sure that we get the same thing in the replacement. We've seen many situations where we end up with something much heavier and chunkier. And since we don't have that information, we'd like to be.
In the application, the applicant mentioned that he wasn't certain there were 5/8 or 3/4, but they would match existing.
Correct, yes. So, yeah, I have got a photograph with a tape measure on it, that showed that it was somewhere between 5/8 and 3/4, but we would certainly remeasure and verify that it matches.
Thank you.
And we can submit the cut sheet as well.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the petition of 19 Sheaf Street LLC, owner for property located at 19 Sheaf Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replacement windows, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 16 and lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts. Who is here to present this? Please come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm John Hool, and I'm the contractor that's trying to get the permit. And from what I saw, the windows are like 1970 replacement windows right now. And I gave you paperwork that I'm looking at Anderson, all wood with raised grids like the period calls for. And the molding and trim on the exterior is awesome. I think it's period. I'm going to leave all that, remove the sashes from the 70s and put the newer, nicer ones, all prime black pine. That's what my intentions were. Try to keep it in the period.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So this is a sash replacement?
Yep, the replacement. We're going to leave all the exterior window buck, all the trim. I don't want to disturb the brick or anything. Because it's beautiful, actually.
So
I think it's period, too. I really do.
So the frame's going to stay, just the
Yep,
sash?
yep.
Okay.
I want to take the 1970 junk ones out and put nice ones in. That's what I'd like to do. And they're more energy efficient. You can't even open these windows right now. They're all painted shut. They got nails in them. Really isn't safe.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Adams?
On the third floor, there are much different windows than normal. The rest of the third floor windows on the street, this being one of 4 or 5 buildings of the same period, I don't know if they're original windows. Typically, the windows were 2 or 6/3.
I think we're going to do that, too.
But most of the windows there are 3/3s or 4/4s.
Right.
But they're 2 windows, one leaf over another,
Yep.
same size. I'm not a fan of that personally, but the other windows of the buildings are like that. So I would say that would be perfectly acceptable on this section of these buildings, solution to putting some of them are 4 lights wide, some of them are 3 lights wide, but one window over another, rather than the 2 stacked windows, 6 or 8 over 3 or 4. Anyway, the point is, what you've got drawn in your specifications are 6/6s, and that's just wrong.
Okay.
The other 2, 3/3 would be acceptable. And certainly 6/3 would be acceptable, but 6/6, the windows become rectangular,
Yes.
the horizontal way. It's just wrong.
Could you do me a favor and draw me a pattern like?
Oh, I don't. Is that a place where we're comfortable?
To illustrate, a 3/3 is fine, and all you'll have to do is just change, the manufacturers are fine.
Be fine with
So,
this.
but the third floor windows should be 3 lights over 3 lights,
Bring it back to the way it was.
rather than 6 lights over 6 lights.
Okay, and the other sash sets on the building, on the next building, are evenly divided. This panel and this panel, I believe one of them is divided into 4. I don't care. But this, the way you've got it set up, this should be like this. Yeah? And that's,
I have a window guy do it for me. But I
The-
totally agree.
the window guys, I don't know what, when they see that you want mullions in the windows rather than a clear expansive glass, they think that you are crazy over mullions and they put as many in as they can.
We don't want that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Martin?
Any other questions?
Yes.
2 more
Yes,
items?
please.
Yes. What are you going to do is the storm windows, and also, you got these nice plastic shutters, or are you going to,
We're going to go wood.
you're going to go wood
Yes.
shutters?
Yep.
Okay.
I want to bring it back to the period. I don't know if you remember 2 years ago, I got a permit for the rear of the building. I put all copper gutters, we did copper roofing, and I noticed the other people in the alley aren't following suit. I don't know why we spent all that money, but yet others didn't. I'm a little confused on that.
We would like to encourage people.
I look forward to it. Because they're beautiful buildings, I think.
They are.
Agreed. I don't see any shutters in your application.
So that's
Well,
something that you'd like to add to the
If,
application?
if I could put amendments to it, yeah, she did mention it to me, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So add wood shutters, and I think what we usually ask for are if you're, if you could give us the specifications for the size of the shutters and any
Okay.
hardware that you're going to use.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay.
Can I make one personal comment? This building has settled over time.
Oh, it has, yes.
You know that.
Oh, I do.
You know that the window openings sagged.
I allowed a little.
Okay, all right, just, I want you to be
Oh,
successful.
no, I know, yes. Yep.
Okay, all right.
And just one last question is, with the windows, we usually specify half screens rather than the full
Oh,
screens.
sure, absolutely.
So we'll just make sure that that's in there so that you can see the nice new windows that you're
Yep.
putting in.
And what's nice about the new windows, the grids are on the outside, like they're single panes, the way it should be,
Yes, Yeah.
not in the glass,
right.
especially on the street side. In the alleys, one thing, but out here in the street, when people walk down on the weekends, it's really cool to see that old look.
Absolutely,
Even though they're not separated glass, I appreciate it, you know?
yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so,
What was the answer to the, are you taking off the storm windows? Is that-
Yes, I would like to. It doesn't fit the period. I don't, and I would like to seal all the exterior nice and tight and let it be like it used to be.
Super.
It looks commercial to me.
yes. Okay,
I
great.
totally don't, I don't like this thing. I just like to see the glass, people come by and it's nice and clean looking. It's gonna be black now. It's, because that's just the type of store it is. I don't think that'll hurt anything, really.
No, that's fine. No, color is not in our purview. If you can paint it, then it's fine.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do we have any openings on the commission?
I'm new to this, I apologize.
No, you're saying, you're intending all the right things. All right, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this application? Anyone online? Okay, great. I will close the public hearing and wait for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application as presented, and I guess the stipulation is that we're going to wait on a specification of the shutters
And half screens.
and have screens.
And that the third floor window should be a 3/3.
Right, the third floor windows will be 3/3 rather than 6/6.
As drawn by Mr. Adams.
Without a permit.
I thank you for that.
It preserves the integrity of the district and is consistent with the special and defining characters of the surrounding property.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, great. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Ian.
much. Have a
Good
good
luck.
night.
Okay, number 3 is the petition of 4446 Market Street LLC, owner for property located at 4446 Market Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replace 4 windows, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on assessor map map 117 is lot 31 and lies within the Character District 5, Downtown Overlay, and Historic Districts. Hello.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eric Frizzell. I'm with 44-46 Market Street, LLC.
Great. Please present,
Yeah, so what we have are 1970s and 1980s vinyl-clad windows that really are just falling apart. We'd like to replace them, ideally going back to the original brick openings. Our proposed windows were previously approved at another entity that we own, 29-41 Congress Street, when we refaced the brick on the front of the building and then took the time to replace those windows as well, also vinyl clad.
Okay, great. I don't think there will be any tears shed over the removal of these windows. Does anybody have any questions about the process or the replacement windows?
What happens to the existing wood frames of the windows?
We are open to any suggestions by the commission, as well as the proposed windows, anything to do with the light dividers. If you'd like to see a different configuration, we are open as well.
It seems like the wood on there is old. It could potentially be historic or original, just the brick molds that are in there. And so those, I don't know if those can be reused or retained.
Some of them are quite rotted, I will say. So it would be a in-kind replacement.
What did you do on Congress Street? How did you handle it there?
That was a little bit of an emergency scaffolding situation where the first course of brick was pulling away from the building. So we had to reface the building, as well as at the time we figured we'd replace the windows as well. So if you could clarify maybe what you mean by how we handled it.
I mean the brick mold. How did?
Oh yeah, it went straight. It was right to the brick opening. So as far as how they actually did it, I mean, I'm not a mason or a window guy, but I know there are special attachment brackets that go directly into the brick in order to fasten the windows to the structure.
It looks like you replaced those on Congress Street. You replaced the wood brick moldings. That's what it looks like. Anyway.
So
Would you like done very well.
Would you like to see that on Market Street on the proposed project?
I could live with that. I don't know if others would feel that preserving what's there is paramount.
Trying to find if there are any historic photographs. I do see some that look like it's no, that's old. That's not old. I think that the 2/2 configuration that they're proposing is fine here, acceptable, as well as a 6/6 could be too. So I don't have a problem with that choice. Anything else?
I think I would be flexible on whether or not the wood trim is replaced. Clearly, it's in bad condition, and some of it is going to have to be replaced in kind if you do it that way, or if you attach it. I think the important part is knowing clearly this brick is, the brick on the other building was new. You're replacing the frontage, so
yes,
it might be easier to attach windows in that case directly to brick than it would be this older brick. And so being careful and mindful of protecting the existing brick, I think, is the critical piece there.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, to me, the existing brick mold as it is pretty simple. So if you needed to replace it in kind, then I think it could be done.
The majority of the buildings on that side of the street have their, in that section of Market Street, have their original window casings. I think I would find it contrary to the work that we do here to say that replacing the window casings and frames on this building could be done in metal. I don't see I don't see how we can explain that tradition changing like that. The way that windows were installed, like many things have changed over the years. These frames, these were put in before there was a thing called caulking, or the caulking was done with yarn and an iron. So to make these windows waterproof back in the day, they'd set the frames in the window openings, and then they'd outline them, usually with something not the words, but like a quarter round. They're actually typically elliptical rather than parts of circles, and they're a brick mold of sorts. We still have moldings made today that are called brick mold for this very purpose. I don't think they match this one. I would think anybody that's got a window shop would be able to manufacture all of the replacement pieces that they need, because the stuff is relatively simple. I would like to see it retained, at least in spirit, if not in actual piece.
Right. Okay. All right. So any other questions or comments on this?
So just to clarify, Mr. Adams, you're looking to retain the original wood moldings around?
Or the profile of it.
The profile of it, okay.
Yeah, not trying to pin you down.
So not going back to the original brick openings, but rather maintaining that trim and...
I see where you're going with brick openings. Yeah, I think that would be inappropriate. All the rest of the windows on the other buildings that flank yours on either side have window casings of some dimension with bands on the edge that live inside of the brick opening, and the window fits inside of that. So, it's a good 4 inches from either side before you get to the glass. That's true. That's the tradition there. Yes.
Okay, and as far as material for that, you would be looking for wood, not some type of composite material, just to prevent this rot for the future.
Understood, and I think the commission in general is sensitive to the issue of rot and decay. We don't put poison in our paint anymore, and I know what the problem is. But sometimes you'll have to make that decision. I don't think it's a huge problem for me, just to say that what you use for the species, whether it's plastic, foam, or whatever, if it looks the same and gets a coat of paint on it, I'm looking up from the sidewalk, it will look the same to me. Okay. I don't think that it's appropriate to try to grind you up over something like that. But you'll find that a lot of the people that deal with composition materials can't solve your problem.
Yeah. Okay.
You get in a bind, give me a call.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yes. So essentially, keep the frames around the windows, either replacing kind or keep that same profile.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to, for, or against this? None online. All right. Seeing no one there, I'll close the public hearing and wait for a motion.
I'd like to move to approve this proposal as presented with the stipulation that the profiles of the wood frames be retained.
Second that.
I will just stipulate again, windows with half screens, just to make sure.
Oh, obviously with half screens.
Okay.
I believe that this will complement and enhance the architectural value of the community.
Yes, definitely be an improvement. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Number 4 is the petition of Kenneth and Rebecca Nicholson, owner, for property located at 53 Prey Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, rebuild screen porch into a 3-season room, replace fencing, replace light fixtures, replace garage door, and adjust the final chimney height, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 102 as Lot 40 and lies within the waterfront business and historic districts. Good evening.
Good evening, Jennifer Ramsey on behalf of OJ Building Company tonight. You've seen this project before. It's been maybe monthly lately, though admin approvals previously. Tonight we wanted to bring the application in because there's some changes that we have made based on DES regulations, not local, so they're not coming from an aesthetic standpoint. And you also have, now that we've nailed down a fence plan, we have a fence plan for the entire property, which I thought would be valuable. So those photos you've seen, they are really no longer current, but we've been working on this house. On the first, well, actually, that is the first sheet, isn't it? The landscape plan, is it? Is that right? Yeah, that one. So this is going to talk about specifically the fence design, the gate. So in this situation, the existing fence was already higher than the ordinance allows, so we went to Board of Adjustments and got variances to retain the height, and then we've redesigned the fence and the gate entry here, which you had seen previously. We had a slightly different gate with, I think, more of an arbor style over the top of it. So now we're proposing this pergola design. And as the new gate wraps around the property, it's replacing old fencing. And so you'll see there is the fence in its entirety is an 8-foot tall fence. The top 2 feet are more of a lattice style. And then as it wraps around the building and drops down toward the water, the fence does drop down as well by the boathouse. Those 2 sides of the yard back up to other properties, so abutters, they're not really public viewpoints necessarily. The gate you're seeing on Prey Street is going to be the most obvious feature that would be visible. And this is all going to be built out of cedar, and I think there's some dimensions, and there's the call-outs up there on the elevation view of this. You can go on to the next page if you'd like. Thanks. So when we started disturbing the groundscape and the land, we were obligated to raise what was going to be a screen porch out of the floodplain. So we've raised it up so it flushes out with the interior of the home, the interior first floor. That's in part a requirement locally, but also at the state level, and more so at the state level, we can enclose this and make it what was a screen porch a 3-season room, but it cannot be heated. So that's not really anything that we need to discuss here, but what we got approval for was a 3-season room that cannot be heated. And so here you're seeing the previously approved design, both the gate and the fence, and below is our new design. So it's raised up about 11 inches and change now, higher than it was before, and that's the entire structure to the rail. Now that's not how much it came out of the ground, but that's how much higher this is when we played with the proportions of the new structure. And then, let's see, also on this application, we had a previously approved light fixture for over the patio door on the second floor. So we're changing that to match another light you had also approved previously, and that's on the right-hand side of the page. And I think this also demonstrates we had very large, very wide chimneys on the existing structure, and when we came on board to work on the project, we got approval to redesign them to be smaller, which you can see as they're narrower. And these chimneys, when the masons started building them, and they're coming out of the back of the house, you're just seeing the ridge in the foreground. When he was building them at this smaller diameter or size, they were getting very, very stick-like and tall on the backside. So we were already beyond what was required for these to flue properly and to meet code, and so they are shorter than what we intended them to be. I think they're about 3 courses shorter. It's just from the other side, they just felt like skinny legs going on for days. They felt really awkward from the backside. So these are less tall than what was previously presented to you from the street side in terms of visually what you expect. And I think, is there one more sheet in that package? Yeah, so this side is going to show you again. So there's the chimneys on the back side, and again, the gate, and also the new 3-season room. And that really, all of the features of that, the metal roof, the balusters, all the things that we had designed kind of in tandem at one of the meetings early on, that's all stayed. We've just raised it up and changed the proportions of those panels, the screen/storm panels a bit. And then, let's see, we're putting new garage doors on the garage building. These will swing out. There's not enough headroom for it to be an overhead door system, but it's probably not going to be used a lot for, an everyday car anyway. So we've detailed some doors here with the manufacturer for the garage. And we'd also like to add, so on the back of the boathouse there, those, as you know, the doors are being replaced, the barn doors are being removed. They're not functioning, they hang there. So we'd like to put an onion light on either side of the back door, which will match what was approved for the front of the boathouse, or the yard-facing side.
Any questions?
This is probably way beside the point, but what effect does raising the three-season porch have with the door from the second floor of the cape?
It's a shorter door now, so we just shortened it up.
Bottom had to come up?
Yes, yep.
And we won't see that because of the fact that this is all, that portion of it's in a well.
Yes, exactly, that's correct.
All right.
Yeah, if we had raised it up, it would have been getting into the rake there, and then there was some condition with the alignment of the headers for the windows, so it was, it actually kind of worked itself out.
Anything else?
I'm just curious, it's a little bit hard to decipher from
Sure.
the drawing around the three-season room what those materials are on the front there, on those panels.
There's the existing, what was a covered porch had columns. We're replicating those columns, and then the majority of this is all trimmed out. It's going to be 3 screen panels with a kind of a stud top pocket, if you will, between. It'll be all painted trim, so it'll read as it kind of, the whole house is going to be painted the same color. So this is all going to be a painted presentation of trim and either screen panels or storm panels, which at this point we're only doing screens, is what we're requesting. But by virtue of calling it a three-season room, there may be a case where these are going to turn into the same thing, but in a storm that gets changed out seasonally. That's not part of this application, but. So basically all wood painted or trim work painted. The eave detail of that is the same eave and gutter that was on the porch before. So we're just replicating everything that was there. With the exception of adding a roof deck. That was not, there was no roof deck. There was just a pitched roof, a hipped roof.
And is the material of that piece of roof that's visible, what will that be?
Metal, standing seam metal roof, which is also being used elsewhere in the property, in the back bay, the kitchen, I believe, the kitchen bump out.
Anything further? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Anyone from the public? Anyone online? All right. Seeing no one rise, I will close the public hearing and wait for a motion. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve this application as presented.
Second.
I believe this will help preserve the integrity of the district in the face of modern requirements being forced on us by our bad habits.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right, thank you
Thanks.
very much. All right, we have now number 5, petition of TD Corner Cottage LLC, owner for property located at 112 Mechanic Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replace faux door with a real door, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 103 as Lot 25 and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Who is here to present this application? Anyone? Do you know who the applicant was for this?
I have not personally met them, so we could move it to the end of the public hearings and see if somebody shows up, or if nobody shows up, we will postpone it to next month, because it is a public hearing, so.
That's right. Okay,
I'm going to make a motion that we move it to the end of the night.
okay,
Okay.
Second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, chair votes aye, so hopefully someone will show up for Mechanic Street by the end of the night. Okay. So number 6 then is the petition of Portsmouth Savings Bank, Bank of New Hampshire owner, and TD Bank co-owner for a property located at 333 State Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, replace 4 doors with windows, and replace remaining exterior doors as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 116 as Lot 5 and lies within the Character District 4 Downtown Overlay and Historic Districts. Who's here to present this one? Anyone? Okay.
Maybe we won't have
I'll
such a
make a
long meeting
motion
after
that
all.
we postpone this one to the end of the evening as well. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's see what happens then. All right, so moving on to our first work session. Number 1, work session requested by Brian Johnson, owner for property located at 126 State Street, unit number 8, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, construct new roof structure to include dormers for additional interior space, construct a multi-story boxed window bay, and exterior entry portico, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 107 as Lot 57-8 and lies within the Character District 4 and Historic Districts. Is anyone here to talk about this one? Okay, good. Since it's a work session, we can all go down to the table.
I didn't read you.
Get to talk about this sooner than I expected. So this is great. All right, so please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Glenn Lambert.
Adam Holmes, we're with Winter Holden. Brian Johnson, the owner.
So we're engaging this work session to review some exterior renovations to the Court Street side of 126 State Street. So it's a really long building where there's that brick portion that's on 126 State Street, but then there's the bluish gray clapboard section that runs all the way back to Court Street. And so we're looking at renovations to Unit 8, which is Brian's unit there, which is, again, only on the Court Street side.
Be careful of the microphone.
Yep, so again, this whole Court Street side addition seems to be from like 2004, so it's a much newer building than the brick area up front.
Yeah, existing elevations.
So if you want to move to the proposed 3D views there, we'll look at what we're proposing to do. So we're looking for exterior roof renovations that were driven by the goal of fitting a loft bedroom in Brian's unit there. And in order to make that happen, right now it's a vaulted ceiling space, but you need extra room to get that full bedroom height. And so the proposed design is looking at rotating the gable roof, that small portion that comes off of the garage there, rotating that 90 degrees to kind of terminate what's currently a really long building, as you saw in those existing photos. And so that allows the gabled space to be more usable. And then in addition to that, we're looking at the box bay and entry portico, again, to make this really feel more like a street-facing building. You kind of have that, there's a 1/3, 2/3 proportion that was established in the existing building, and so we're kind of playing into that by adding the box bay where the double windows are, and then the single entry element over the single stacked windows. And moving along to the precedent. So again, these are some buildings There's one on Church Street that has this two-story box bay that has similar details to what we were showing. And then farther down State Street, there's other buildings that again are playing on this like 1/3, 2/3 of having a two-story box bay and the doubled windows, and then the single stacked windows over the entry piece.
Not to interrupt your train here, but what's a 1/3, 2/3 mean?
Just having,
Kind of the offset massing.
yeah, where there's the three windows across.
Horizontally, the facade.
Yes. A lot of these buildings, again, have the 3 single windows. And so this element's taking 2 of them and grouping them together and then having the one on the side where the entry
Which
is.
is what you have there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, single entry, one line up the window, and then double stacked windows.
Again, these are the proposed elevations. So we are raising the ridge from the original ridge, but it's still within the zoning requirements of the 35-foot building height, measured at the midpoint of the gable. And we're not going above the existing taller garage ridge that's beyond this mass.
Talk about the little cutout balcony.
Yeah, the little cutout balcony, again, because we're trying to keep this as just a minimal loft up there. It's just accessory balcony space for the bedroom. Because as it is right now, because the property line, that's why there's the faux windows on that side. The property line is so close, you can't really make use of that wall. So by having the recessed balcony, you can get the door in there. Not worry about fire rating that.
So currently, there's no
Oh, yeah, those are false
light
windows
window,
on the
yeah.
side.
Yeah, they're just shuttered up
Yeah.
right now. And then on the final page these are 3D view comparisons of, we had an original iteration that kept the existing gable on the front, and then using dormers out the sides to get that extra space. But we found that it didn't really get the desired interior space, and also it's still playing into the really long forum you see on Court Street. So we just felt that this gable space not only made a better interior space, but helped this building, it reduces the amount of wall that's facing the street. And it also
Retains the smaller proportions of the upper levels.
Yeah.
Kind of plays down the massing of the addition.
Any questions? Any thoughts? This is work session, so it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
Have you
Casual.
considered anything that will visually support the box bay?
you can definitely see some sort of like brackets underneath. In the precedent, some of the images had something like that.
My partner for years was a mason, and he always saw things in terms of how they supported themselves. Bricks don't float in the air. That's the point of that. I think that's a good rule.
Was there any consideration of extending the box bay down to the first floor entry so that it's consistent from the bottom all the way to the top? There's a single window there.
Yeah, right now. So that was mainly to avoid doing some sort of foundation work there. It could be floating a bit, but then this keeps the box bay window in unit number 8 at the top there.
I see, that's a different unit.
Yeah, the first 2 floors are a separate
It may make
unit.
it look more like an L, like a silly small L, if you run it all the way to the grade. In one of your earlier development, original gable study.
Yep.
You show a dormer, I think I'm getting it, you're showing a dormer going to the left, to the west. I don't see a corner of it poking out in the perspective to the right, but that's because you can't put one there because of your property line issue.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, on the very last page, you can see there's another smaller dormer that's more inset, and then that's the
Sure.
3 feet off the property line too.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm just struggling with this because it seems like are you providing options? One is the gable.
No, the idea was to kind of bring you the original study we did, which was to maintain the existing roof line.
And what page is that on?
It's kind of mixed in, so the Court Street, the original gable study, it's basically the right-hand side.
The last two pages.
On page
13 and 12.
12 and 13, sorry.
Okay, I don't have a problem with the box bay. That's something that you see in multiple places around town. The void that you're okay. You're proposing this.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Not very clear. That I have a problem with. This was built in 2004.
Yeah, that's what's on record, yes.
I'm sorry?
That's what's on the records, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a problem with that as a detail and design. It's very awkward and weird. It's a void. It's got two vertical pieces of trim. There's not really some sort of articulation of where the clapboard meets the roof deck. So I couldn't support something this odd, and I would need something that's, I mean, it doesn't match the window next to it. It doesn't really align with the windows below. So I would like to see something a little more thought out. And the dormer on the roof facing the Court Street, I'd like it. It's hard to really get a sense of it because you're showing it in perspective, and then when you show it in elevation, I'm still not.
Making it
Good
dark
sense
doesn't
of
help
it.
sell it.
I'm sorry?
Making it dark doesn't seem to help sell it for me.
Yeah.
The dark elements, the balcony, recessed balcony, and the dormer, it's dark, I think was a mistake. But I think you're right.
Yeah, but hey, this is a work session, so. But I could support the bay window. I think that's more developed, and I consider that more of an appropriate feature for the surrounding area.
Can you use materials more consistent with the other dormers on the building?
On the dormer at the roof?
Yes, on the roof.
Yeah, I think the thought was to try to minimize it with the two slope pitches and try to keep it, again, as I'll say almost a non-element once you get above the existing roof line.
Yeah, I don't see that you would have much room for any clapboards in that little shed dormer.
Yeah, I'll just speak. That was similar thought. I just think it looks inconsistent with the other dormers. Like this is a very modern dormer presentation compared to the other ones right behind it. So my sentiment's similar to Martin's of the box bay look fine and cohesive with other
Yeah, we could probably
elements.
look at like trimming, because I think that is going to be the thing, is the size of it. Getting clapboards in there, probably flash, probably not going to work, but
Sure.
we could flash it, trim it out.
But it's just something to continue the design from the dormers coming around is my
Even if
take on
you
this.
used, it looks, are you proposing like vertical paneling for the box bay? Because something like. or
Yeah,
is it
something
just-
like a vertical panel or a board
So,
batten.
Even using that for the dormer would probably be
Yeah,
simple
so-
enough. I see where you're trying to go with having it disappear, so a big white dormer wouldn't do that, but, I would maybe look at something, just a little bit softer.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit the proportions of the other dormers. That's why we try to
Right.
reduce it, because it's much wider but also shorter.
Yes. I had one other question on the little porch.
Yep.
If the railing, the railing also stands out because it doesn't match the rest of the railing on the building. And I realize the goal is for it to disappear, but that hole doesn't disappear from the street, and that would be very visible from Port Street. So I think consistency might be helpful.
Yeah, the recessed porch bothers me as well. I think also the fact that it goes to a peak, where the other porches have flat roofs, that might also contribute to it. Like Martin, I'm just not a fan of it. My question about the dormer is, it's set to the left of the whole roof line there. Is that because of some design on the inside, or was it done to align with
porch?
It's because of the porch.
This?
Yeah, it's because the
To
porch
make
is there.
to make the porch happen. Okay. Be a reason.
I don't know if this is appropriate for final statements. I think having looked at the thing, put the amount of time, not much, that we've been cut into it, for me, we're crossing my comfort zone when we move the gable at all. I think it just does disturbing things to the rest of the building in terms of scale. Personally, I would support a supported box bay and a dormer on the existing roof facing west, which you could bring, as far as I can see, with the right choice of materials, right to the edge of the sidewall of the building, making it a full-size dormer. But I'm not touching the gable, not touching the ridge line, obviously not touching the side of the building toward your abutter. That's me. I'm bothered by the hole. I'm bothered by the fourth floor look that you get with the dormer, the box bay fully developed. Says me.
You mentioned turning the aspect of the roof to terminate the building as opposed to having just long. I actually find that having the building continue reads logically to me, and then to have it suddenly abruptly end at a 90-degree stop. It's a long, skinny building. I think you're trying to make a long, skinny building not be a long, skinny building by putting something big on the end, and I'm not sure that
It also breaks the rule of dependencies, where this starts at a three-story building on State Street and comes across in a long way, and then all of a sudden gets bigger again. Most of the time, you don't do that with buildings. You just start stepping down, end up with the well house or the privy.
Yes.
Maybe a couple questions for me.
Yeah.
So on the 3D comparison view, on this east side, you would prefer to see something more like that? Extend all the way over?
I
The
can't
original
agree with that.
gable.
There, where are you?
It's the original gable.
Yeah.
Right here,
This one here.
on the right-hand side.
Yeah, where,
You'd
I
basically,
didn't see what you were saying.
you basically prefer to see this extended all the way to here on both sides.
Is that what David was saying? I think that's what
He
David
was
said.
saying,
The right-hand
yes,
side.
to make a shed dormer on either side of the gable. Sorry, did that answer your question? Do you have any others?
Yeah, so this,
Okay.
the proposed would have a low chance of approval, sounds like.
Yeah, you kind of have to take the temperature of the group. I don't actually have a problem with drastically changing this building because it's just not old and it's not.
It doesn't face Strawberry Bank?
It,
Is that what you mean?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
It does face Strawberry Bank, but it is not old. It's almost 20 years old. It's very awkward the way it's constructed.
And I think that was part of the attempt to rotate the end, is you
So-
do have this very long, narrow building.
You do. It's a very awkward building. It's very tall and very narrow. And, and in that sense, I don't know that you need to correct it per se, but I feel like there's more flexibility with redesigning this building because of that, because it So, you know, I would not have as much of a problem with changing around the gable end. It does, the way it's proposed now is is awkward because it has that tiny little window up top. And so it does make it look like it's just been kind of squished. But yeah, I think that it needs a little bit more imagination to try and figure out. I don't envy you. This is a tiny space and it looks very weird, and I totally sympathize with you having a whole wall where you can't have any light come in. We have no windows.
Yeah.
And so I totally can, you know, understand why you need to get creative to try and get a little bit light on all three walls there. So, yeah, the configuration is, it's difficult and complicated because it's a complicated building. So can I ask, so your unit is the upper floors, not, so the first two are somebody
No,
else's?
it's just the top floor.
Right.
And then the second part of the unit is in the other part of the building.
Okay.
So it's primarily, it's just one floor,
Okay.
one bedroom. So we're trying to add a second bedroom,
So-
primarily to be able to stay in this location. So trying to get some good direction on where to go without, frankly, sinking a lot of money into something that might be a dead end. So
Right.
getting a good sense of where everybody is like important for tonight for us.
Yeah, I also think the recess porch is an attempt to carve out outdoor space, which obviously facing the street, which is where he is gonna be really tough.
Yeah, I want to support what you're saying. I think you could change that gable orientation. I think it would punctuate the end, and right now it is lanky and long and kind of just keeps going. So I think it's just the execution at the detail level that I'm having a problem with. I think you could still have your programmatic elements, everything you want for an interior space and the features and everything. I just think some of the detailing and some of the way it's executed is just coming off inconsistent, you know, disharmonious, if that's a word. Not in harmony.
So it sounds like the rotated gable, the massing of it, all that could be acceptable. It's down to the details of
For me.
trim and making it consistent with the rest of the building.
I would, excuse me, I would accept the idea of switching that roof, excuse me, the roof line, and I like the box elements. My problem is that new gable is shortened, and I'm not sure what to do with that hole in the side. It just doesn't seem to fit. But I would not have any troubles ending the building by switching the roof line. But I would have troubles with the recess, and then it seems like an asymmetrical gable on the end there. Looks like everything's shoved over to the left, and again, you said that's to allow that recess.
If there's a way with that gable to not, even if it was there's a dummy section to it, just to make it look more in line, I think, with the building.
Do you mean the dormer?
Yeah, I mean the dormer, sorry, the gable, the dormer. So that you're,
Yeah, the left and right.
yeah, so it
orientation up
looks,
front.
Yeah.
you know, more appropriate. It doesn't look like it's off-center with the building. They're all aesthetic things that I'm concerned about, is just making it look more consistent. So even with these changes, it looks like they were there when the building was built. That they aren't an afterthought, I guess, is what I would say. That's my concern, is it looks like it's an afterthought, and I don't think that that's ideal.
I mean, on the one hand, yes, there is sort of language of the subordination of the buildings from the front main building on State Street. However, this almost reads as its own building that's just attached to that front building. So, you know, if it works that you need to raise the height of the ridge in order to make the proportions work, to meet the garage building, maybe that is better in the long run than trying to squish it down and make it smaller. So I think what you're hearing is that every one of us is not necessarily in agreement, but we all are uncomfortable with the proportions of what's going on. So,
sorry, what does it mean by proportions?
In either sort of option of keeping the gable where it is and putting dormers on either side, or rotating the gable and having, you know, it's all very awkward what you're trying to cram in up there. So if you need to go up to make the proportions more traditional, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and reflective of proportions and gable angles and roof rakes and all of those things for what is in the context, in its context and its surrounding, you know, that.
It could go higher, you're saying, to make the proportions feel better.
To make it look right?
Yeah.
To make it feel better?
And to one of your points, I think this building was actually added on.
Yeah.
When they originally did it, it stopped, and then this was.
I don't know.
I remember when it was
who
built.
remembers? Do you remember?
I remember when it was built.
You do?
2004-ish.
Yeah.
And they added that whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Makes sense.
all right. Any other
Just,
thoughts?
yeah, one more question.
Yes.
Just and this is again for Brian. Outdoor space at this upper level, is that gonna be hard to get approval for, because it is, again, where his unit placement is probably gonna be visible unless we can work it in with roof lines?
I'll speak first,
Yes.
I guess. I just think it looks modern and awkward where it currently is, but I don't know if you could bring it around on I don't know
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
that's
an
part of
architect,
what I'm
but yeah,
wondering is
okay.
like the other side is more contained in the property, but is easily just as visible. I mean, because it does taper down as you get to the Court Street side.
I was wondering if it was like set back on the side, like here, you know, and then it's not quite like, but when you're walking
no,
down.
that's what I'm wondering. It's like
When you're walking down Court Street from Prescott Park, this building is noticeable.
Yeah. Maybe two things. If it looked more like the rest of the decks, how would that compare then? When you are walking down Court Street in the summer, there's a huge tree there.
Yeah.
And you can barely see you can't see the building until you're past that tree, like at that big driveway anyways.
You can't use the tree.
You could disappear.
Yeah.
So,
As a rule, just to answer that question, I'm not against you having an outdoor space at the third level. It's how it's executed. For me.
It's just hard to imagine, you know, until you present something to answer your question directly, I guess.
and it's hard to have a condoized building where you're trying to do something different and not do the whole building at once. So I think it's easier to kind of default to what is there already to make it look like a cohesive building rather than bring attention to the fact that it's chopped up into different condo units.
And I would say the way you sold the box bay, but design precedent, if you could sell the other features as by finding other things in town very similar, would go a long way.
Sorry, did you have anything? Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, I will say a lot of the left and right placement of items is driven by how scrunched that ridge is, so just getting the space, like it kind of sets where things are left to right, but with a higher ridge, I think those things have space to align better with what's below.
Is it feasible to do a deck off the other side that is exterior to the building, given that it's there's the drive there, so you do have more room on the other side. I'm curious if it's even, if that would be allowed by the condo board, or if that's something that,
Yeah, I'm not sure who owns the rights over
the drive.
over the drive.
Yeah, I was thinking, that's why I was asking, it's probably gonna be something similar, it's gonna have to be built back in as a negative.
Any other questions or thoughts? Any other questions?
My only other comment was this overhang over the door is also new. That's not currently there from photos.
Oh, the little gable piece, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the braces, yeah, that's new.
And it's very generous of you to add a box bay to a unit this Snyder's. So.
Yeah, most of the stuff on the front is to try to be
Unify the design.
pleasing to the commission.
Much appreciated. All right. Do you want to come back again, or do you think you have enough to go forward with a public hearing?
Probably regroup, I would say for now, we'll continue it.
Okay, great. So could I have a motion to continue?
So moved?
Moved.
Seconded?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, thank you, good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Then we have work session number 2, requested by Maximilian Hochbender, owner for property located at 44 Rogers Street, wherein permission is requested to allow exterior renovations to an existing structure, reconstruct rear L, replace vinyl siding, shutters, and trim with wood, as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 116 as Lot 45 and lies within the Mixed Research Office and Historic Districts. Hello. Hello again.
Yes. So, we have, I'm Mark Giannini, Portsmouth Architects. I'm here with Todd, the applicant. So we have
Could I
an
interrupt
existing.
real quick for a question?
Yeah.
Did this property just happen to change ownership like recently?
It's under contract.
Okay, that I was gonna say that's just why I had the other owner
Yeah.
listed because it's
Yeah.
current. Okay, sorry, just wanted to make sure.
Tell us your full name. So we can-
Todd Hudson.
Sorry.
Great, thank you.
So we have an existing 3-story mansard on Rogers Avenue. There's been evidence of a couple additions, which are referring to as the rear L. Based on looking at old insurance maps, it appears that the first addition in the rear was done sometime in the late 1800s. And then sometime after 1950, there was a smaller second addition, which shows up more of like it used to be a screened-in porch or 3-season porch or something that's been enclosed. It doesn't have much of a foundation underneath it. So the plan that we're here proposing tonight is basically restoring the existing structure, the existing 3-story mansard, and then reconstructing that rear L, keeping the existing footprint, and then expanding that up to a full 3 stories to match the front piece. And once we get through some of the pages here, we've got 3 different options to show you and get feedback on different massing options to accomplish that reconstruction. So the main house, as well as the addition, we're looking to remove and replace vinyl siding, vinyl windows, the vinyl shutters are on there, replace them with wood clapboards, wood trim that's more appropriate as far as profiles for the period and the existing trim profiles that are on the building. New clad windows, and you'll see we've got some different mullion options and stuff to show you. Going to the second page, which has existing photographs. You can see in the upper photos there, the addition. Right now, there's the single-story piece of it that has a roof deck on it, and then above that, the 2-story part of it has a roof deck on that, so there's 2 roof decks accessed by a rear stair that goes up. There's also a door on the 3rd floor mansard that goes out to the uppermost roof deck. and those are all connected. That mansard roof on the third floor, that area was a separate apartment that was accessed from the outside, which the plan is to basically convert this back to just a single-family home. In the bottom right photo there's an existing detached two-car garage. I think that might have been in front of you guys about a year or two ago. They did some maintenance as well as new siding and trim and added the overhead garage door there that's there now. On A2, next sheet, we've got just the existing site plan, show you kind of context around the neighboring properties. You can see in the lighter hatch the original footprint of the mansard, and then the additions in the back, as well as the stoop and the rear stair that's there, and then the detached garage. Next on A3, existing elevations, similar to, which show, similar to the photographs. Moving on to A4 is the first of the three options that we kind of came up with to get your feedback. So this one is basically replicating the mansard form that's on the existing house on the reconstruction of the rear. We're accentuating the step here you'll see between the two. There is kind of a small step there now of a couple inches. We're accentuating that a little bit more just to have a little more differentiation between the newer piece or the reconstruction and the original house. There's actually, on the opposite side of this, there's a larger step that's already there that consists of a couple feet. So there's a larger jog. We'd be reconstructing the existing single dormers of the mansard, and then in the addition in the back, so that there's some similarity, but again, differences. We're showing a paired shed dormer on the addition. Similar trim for the roof overhang, eave, the different screw-up brackets, and then where the rear entrance here, we're adding a small overhang with some other brackets. That would probably be the primary entrance it is currently now, and we'd be reusing that same area for the entry. Other elements like on the front entrance and the bay window would stay as is. We'd obviously repair any of the trim and brackets that are there now, replace in kind if needed. Moving on to option 2. This would be, again, a similar footprint and a similar mansard roof. In this scenario, we're showing a 3-story bay window that is sticking out about 20 inches from the face of the rear elevation and is continuing up. It gives it a slightly more contemporary look, again, to differentiate from the original piece of the house, but it also provides some nice views and light, on the rooms that are in the back of the building. And then option 3 here, again, has the same footprint. In this scenario, we're doing a gable roof with 2 doghouse dormers, one on each side. This one, has a different roof form, so it's even more different than the mansard, but again, similar profile, massing, and size. The next page is really floor plans. These are very conceptual at this point, but just to give you a sense of the program, again, it's a single-family home, 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, kitchen living space on the ground floor. And then on sheet A8, the last one, we're just giving you a sense of the products that we're planning on using, copper gutters and downspouts, replacing, as I said earlier, any of the vinyl shutter with a composite shutter, wood clapboards. The trim and the railing are a very small piece. That's just really the rear stoop by the rear entrance. And then the existing building has asphalt shingles, so we would be replacing that with asphalt shingles. And then looking to do like a Marvin Elevate or similar type wood-clad window for everything. So replacement as well as the reconstruction in the rear. As far as the window openings themselves, again, we're not moving any windows, we're not adding any windows to the original piece. The existing single dormers that are on that mansard right now are in pretty rough shape. They've been resided with just plywood, painted plywood. The original trim has been all removed, and it really just has like a single 1x4 fascia. So we would rebuild those and add some additional trim elements that we have in some more historic photos. So it just has a slightly more detail than what's there now. And again, you know, window trims as well as siding trims would be, you know, period as far as profiles, and we'd include all that in, you know, further submission once we get that far. Two elements that we did want to discuss with you, one being the chimney. There's a Bishop's Cap chimney that kind of goes up in the middle of the building, and we wanted to get your opinion on replacing that with a non-functional chimney. And then the other piece would be the mansard roof itself on the original structure, replacing in kind, basically. So it would have all the same proportions, slopes, size, but basically reconstructing it based on just the poor condition that it's in. I don't think we have any photos in our packet. We do have an analysis done by Ross Engineering, where they talk about the condition of it. This has some photos we can pass around. The floor joist of the third floor, basically cantilever over the exterior walls, and right now the roof framing is sitting on that. And any of the interior walls that were originally sitting kind of on the exterior walls have all been removed, all that framing. It was by a previous owner. Basically the whole third floor was gutted to be redone, but just didn't happen. So all of the interior framing that was really part of the original roof structure has been kind of either removed altogether or manipulated.
Yeah, none of the, when they're coming down the mansards, they don't hit on any of the actual framing that they need to be hitting on. They're, some points, they're feet off. So the roof isn't really held up by a lot right now, and doesn't really have a great way to, in its current state, hit those spots to code really whatsoever. So ideally, we make that safe and the way it needs to look and functioning.
Are you thinking about taking it down to the cornice line and then rebuilding the whole sloped roof?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, the roof frame.
Wasn't the thought when we first looked at it.
If you were to proceed with that, are your engineers, your code officials going to force you to do something else? Because what it looks to me like the rafters don't actually land on anything. It looks to me like the rafters are hanging on the cornice.
Yes.
It looks to me like the rafters were just not so much dangling, but supporting themselves only by hanging from that third floor stud wall, which is now gone.
100%. Right.
So are they going to make you change the bottom roof edge detail? Because they don't let people build like this anymore.
Well, I think we're going to have basically a knee wall that's inside the third floor that's sitting on the existing balloon framing.
And
that's going to be providing,
solve the problem.
that's going to provide most of the support. And then, you know, there'll obviously be a rafter at the same slope. That's carrying the roof down to the existing cornice line.
Yeah, we literally just did this on a project on Dana Street. Well, there wasn't a mansard roof, but we did have to, with the balloon framing, have to reframe the entire inside of that to then hit all of our roof lines correctly and bring the load down the way we need to. So that's what we did.
Ian, or I would be, I think myself would be the person who would always say, oh my God, we want more of this because it's such a darling little building.
Yeah, it's cool.
But I wonder, are you working yourself into a corner? Because as soon as you put a gambrel on this thing, then the cornice has got to somehow relate. The window casings have to somehow relate. You're sort of trapping yourself in a moment.
You're talking about the rear piece?
Yeah, past the roof problem, just to your new design. I wonder if you're better off. Why did it take you so long to get to the pitched roof?
Because we just put that as a third option.
If you start with that, you add a third option, is that what you're saying?
No, the third option was option number 2, when we were trying to add a more of a contemporary element to change things up a little. But
I would, rationally accept any of these solutions. I think most anyone would. Part of the deal is we get to spruce up the existing piece of the building, and you get to fix the missing pieces of trim. We get it maybe painted a nice old yellow, dark yellow with green trim. It'd be lovely. We have to work on a faux slate roof for it. I'd trade you a faux slate roof for a faux chimney. But I personally, I think all of them are great. I think the one that's probably best is the third one.
I tend to agree with you that option number 3, and I wasn't sure why until I think it preserves better the feel of that small square mansard, where once you added another mansard onto it, you've lost that element. And even though you have the same mass, really, with the option number 3 sticking off the end, it doesn't look like a 3-bay mansard. It looks like a little mansard with a thing on the end. And somehow that seems to speak better to me to the history and what we're inheriting from this building.
If we extended the mansard, the next thing you'd want to see is some sort of Queen Anne tower on one corner of it, because it's just not enough of a house.
We can show you that.
We're talking bigger, I'm all in.
Can I just ask which one you like the best?
2.
Yes.
I think is the one you'd pick.
2 is the one I like. I think it makes it. I like carrying the roof line a lot, to be totally honest with you, from the construction side of it, and just overall projects that we're doing in town. I really love the idea of running a giant mansard roof. I just think it's interesting. There's not a lot of them. We have a bunch that have been redone in town, like the Provident Building, most of the larger ones, but there's not a lot that you have for the single families where that's kept. It just isn't. And if you're outside of HDC, those are coming off because they're expensive. You need a really solid engineer, and you need a very skilled carpenter to make all of that work. Plus, we have those, and that's why I think that's the most interesting option. And then we get a little hide on that, obviously, that piece of it as well.
The third option does crowd that bedroom.
Yeah.
So I'll just share, I think it's really well done. I think you're going to bring this property back to a better, more beautiful state. I personally like the first one, but I would support any of the 3.
I'm in a similar place. I think the setting back of the addition does distinguish it as an addition, and so I'm comfortable with any of the 3 options. I'm happy that you're restoring the existing. I think that's very important.
I was just thinking, well, first of all, yes, thank you for putting some wonderful materials back onto the original portion of the house. I was thinking that option 3 looks like a separate home, a separate dwelling. And for me, that's inappropriate. I think the fact that you have jogs, you're jogging out on one side, you're jogging in on the other, that the mansard going around works in that way. So, but anyway, yeah, that I agree. If you're going to go this far with it, that the faux slate is probably a much better way to go. Terrific home, my compliments, but I would go mansard 1 or 2.
I like the option 2, especially the back windows and the back column there that really opens it up. It's also your backyard, so it's not being seen by the street, but it really, I think, would bring incredible light into those bedrooms.
Be a 3 for 3. You don't often get that.
What I'm looking for 2 right now too. So.
I'll say that I also tend to prefer the third option because I do think that it emphasizes the original mansard building, and kind of highlights it better. But I also think the other two options are appropriate. It's, if you had a really big original mansard roof, then you could maybe step down the rear end, but it doesn't. I don't think that they'll let you do that. So that's my take on there. But yeah, I think that, like you've heard from everyone, this is a great project, and we appreciate bringing this house back to respectability.
Structural soundness.
Yes. Is this, I'm trying to remember, is this house one that we saw before with, did we get the request to remove this chimney before and we said no?
No,
Or
it was across the street.
That
It
was
was the one that had like 3 or 4 chimneys
Mark
all
Street?
together.
Something?
No,
Yeah,
it was
Now, this one
on
had the
Court Street.
chimney in the back that he wanted to remove and open it up, yeah.
So.
That was when it was Max.
Several.
Max Render, yeah.
So, yeah, I think the chimney will be a discussion because it still is, it's part of the history and the character of the building, but, so, as long as you're not, faux chimneys are still something that we are waiting to see how history comes down on.
We have seen the disappointment.
Yes.
And it's hard. I mean, it's just,
Very shortly, you will see the one I do on Daniel Street, and I will take pictures and a video with my head in it for all of you when you said yes to that one, and hopefully this one will be the same. And
We'll just see what happens in 10 to 15 years. That's the question.
hopefully I'm still doing it at that time.
Yes.
One quick question on option 3. I guess one of the things that we were thinking and talking about was, that how the two roofs marry, because you get the valley, obviously, where you've got the slope of the mansard and now the gable running into it. It's a unique situation, but
I think if you look at option 3 in elevation, on that long elevation, and you see that back section roof overtakes the mansard, you won't feel as excited about it.
Right.
It might.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Yep. Lots of positive feedback.
The
so.
colors will be a vote on Instagram. Follow Red Post Realty. Throw the yellow.
you still got a few months.
Yeah, I've got a little time.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you. So, do you have enough to move on, or do you want to extend the work session?
Would it be safer just to extend the work session if we decide to apply for
Sure, you could
public
do
hearing?
one, you could do both, you could.
Yeah, we can.
double up.
Work session and,
What's the word I'm looking for?
Continuance?
Continue. Thank you. So long. We can continue the work session to be safe, and if you want to come back with work session / public hearing.
Okay.
All right. So,
We don't want to prolong it any more than we need to.
yeah. So, if someone, if we can, motion to continue. Thank you.
And seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good luck.
Great. This is a win for you.
All right.
3 out of 3, like you said.
All right, our last work session of the day is number 3 work session requested by Robert M. Snover, Revocable Trust owner, for property located at 58 Humphreys Court, wherein permission is requested to allow the demolition of the existing single-family home and the new construction of a new multifamily dwelling as per plans on file at planning board. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 101 as Lot 47 and lies within the general residence B and historic districts.
Good evening.
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'll be back.
Anybody else need a quick bathroom break? Sorry.
Oh, okay. I have one other drawing to add. You can just
Well, we're not, but
Okay.
if you,
I'm here.
Yes. Excuse me, while
I can-
setting up, I was just wondering, as butters, are we allowed to have a look at what's
Yes, absolutely.
Are we allowed at the table?
You're, if you want to just bring your chairs closer, that's fine.
Okay.
And if you have an extra.
Yeah, here's an extra of this.
Sure.
I'll give one back. Isaac, so it's on the record.
Yes.
Have we ever met? Oh, yeah, I work with you, Steve. On Riverwalk project. 30 years ago. Got it. Because that Bob Snover.
All right, so please introduce yourselves.
Yes, yep,
and-
Ann Whitney, architect, and Bob Snover, owner. Yep.
Thank you.
And his, Darcy, his wife's listening in via Zoom.
Via Zoom, yep. And we purchased the property about a year and a half ago, but have lived in Portsmouth for over 40 years. We raised our both adult sons, were raised, born here. And we purchased the property and transitioned to a retirement where we could walk to downtown and be in the historic district. The current existing sort of modern home just doesn't seem to meet our needs, the transition into retirement. And so to retain Ann and Haley Ward engineering firm to assist us planning to do something else. And so, walk us through that this evening.
Yeah, so tonight, push that back a little. We're looking at reviewing the, request for demolition as a work session. And also I've got some concept drawings of what we're proposing to go back, just at a really sort of basic massing and entrance and site level.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, yeah, let's
Let's go.
start with the demolition, the elephant. in the
Yes,
room.
yep. This existing split-level residence, 1969. It doesn't really fit in with the 18th and 19th century structures that are surrounding it in this neighborhood. In other parts of the city, there are lots of subdivisions that were kind of Elwyn Park area that have multiple of this style of building, and so I don't feel like, losing this building is going to be a real hardship. It's also just the way it's oriented. It's got this huge curb cut. It's over 50 feet. That's right on the corner where Humphreys Court wraps around. And the front door is completely away from any kind of streetscape. Also, the structure, because it's a split level, there's multiple levels in the basement and up above. It'd just be a really difficult building, given the small size of it, to, you'd really have to take it down to rebuild it to kind of create any other new structure. So we're proposing to take the building down, and then in working towards, actually the second page just shows, how the existing plan, survey plan, shows the big curb cut and how it's located right in the middle of the site. It's a sloping site, somewhat gradually, but, it goes from 22 down to 14, so there's a pretty good slope that happens on this property. Looking at the existing neighborhood, that's next page, we've got sort of what I call the south side of Humphreys Court. They're fairly little larger, more detailed. The mansard, which was a 2-story, we put a 3rd story on that about 20 years ago. And then these two more sort of shingly Victorian more structures. They're very tall, 2.5 to 3-story structures. On the other side of the street, it's primarily a series of New Englanders with a couple of capes, and I'll show you that on the next page. And most of them have had a fair amount of additions put onto them. Most of the properties are right close to the street on both sides. Second page shows a couple more. The two on the corner, where Humphreys curves, are the two capes that are there. Most of the structures also have garages, which is kind of unusual for the south end. This is sort of on the edge of the south end. Yep. And there's a couple other views. So the view south from the curve up into Newcastle Ave, where you get into more of these 2.5 to 3 story structures. Actually, this is where I've inserted this page. This is more of like a figure ground shows existing structural footprints, and then I've inserted the footprint that we're proposing. What I was trying to do is to create as much yard space as possible, and I'll get into that more on my roof plan, better access, but also to have the 2-story structures separated in a similar fashion to a lot of the other buildings in the neighborhood. And then the 1-story connector would have less of an impact on the mass of the structure. Next page shows a roof plan of what I'm proposing. On the right-hand side, that's the south elevation, and then as Humphrey Court runs along here, that'd be the north, east, and west. And the nicer views on the property are on that east side. So it's trying to create this upper south structure is more the main structure with the connector, and then this would be more of a carriage barn, 2-story with the second dwelling. And we're not a multifamily, we're just a duplex 2-family structure. I shifted the driveway around so it's off the corner a bit and narrowed it down, and we have enough room for coming into this 3 garage bays coming in to be able to turn around and go out, so you're not going to be backing out into the street. So we'd come into this driveway area, and then this is a little more formal structure, which would have some hardscape and garden steps up. Because of the slope, I've got this structure 4 feet higher than this one, and trying to make it fit into the land that way. And the backside, so then the second dwelling, which would really be more on the Humphreys Court side, would have a small, a 2-story addition off the back, or off the east side, and then an entry and porch from Humphreys Court. And given the slope of the land, I'm sort of pulling the steps away as the grade drops back down towards the west. This is just conceptually, I might be able to pull it off so that we could come right up onto that porch, but I've got a porch and then an access walkway from the driveway with some steps in the landscape to kind of come up, so that would be the street entrance. So I'm trying to create a street entrance for that second dwelling unit. Again, we're trying to stay away from that east line to create as much yard space as possible for the 2 units.
Can you show me the east line?
The east line is this line here.
Toward the water abutter.
Toward the closest abutter, yes, that's the east line. And the south line has got a 1.5-story barn and then a small garage on that side. And then we've got Humphreys Court wrapping the other two sides of the property. Any questions so far, or I can just keep going? So I've worked some massing up. It's not super detailed because I haven't really gotten into that level, but this lower elevation on this next page is the elevation showing the north side of Humphreys Court, where I've got the entrance into the second dwelling unit, and then you're looking behind to the entrance to the upper building that's raised up above. I've put windows in just as it's a way to, create scale. typical window sizes, 5 feet by 32 on the first floor, shorter windows on the second floor. Just sort of starting to work with the placement of that. This east elevation shows that gable end. There's a small deck off of that, so they would have access to the yard. They would also have access, both from the garages, they have access to the south on both of these, so you wouldn't see doors. The doors would be hidden from this east elevation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think before we get too bogged down into sort of the concepts of the new stuff, I do want to talk about how we feel about the demolition of the current house before we spend too much time on this, just to see how we go forward. So, understood that this is not currently meeting your needs, and it is a mid-20th century house in a mostly 19th century neighborhood. This was, as we all know, built by Harold Whitehouse, which
40 years.
40 years, yeah.
And a locally prominent person. And so that's, in my opinion, still something to consider in our historic district, because it is part of our history, and a locally significant person, now unfortunately historic, is still a good reason to preserve something, because it's that's one of the factors in assessing historic significance of a building is who lived there. This is talking about National Register significance, which is not necessarily exactly what we apply here, but it's still the standard, which is, did a special event or something take place here? Did a significant person live here, or is it a great example of this, a type of architecture? So I wanted to just kind of open it up to all of us to talk about both the, who lived here, and then whether or not it's appropriate to take this building down, because it is part of the history of the area, and it is one of the few that we have in our district. It's a really good example of a 1960s split level. So I'd love to hear from the commission. Anybody want to start?
How long did he live there?
He built it.
So, 69 or 65?
Yep.
The story I heard was because back when he built it in 1969, the Elwyn Park area was getting developed, and he couldn't quite afford to buy a property there. And Portsmouth was in a more depressed state at that point, and that he found this piece of land, this big piece of land, and put an Elwyn Park house on this piece of property. Yep.
This, I think, is the only split level in the district. I don't know which side of the argument that places it, but it's a rarity. It's funny that we'd be having this conversation about the newest house in the neighborhood. There are two, 50s era capes, and then the rest, as you say, are turn-of-century buildings.
I almost feel like this would have been appropriate for a site walk, if we're going to venture into conversation of the value of the house. But I appreciate what you're saying. The man was part of the local fabric. He's an author. He had, I think he served on the board, on the city
Several boards. Yep.
So I think a walk might be appropriate, just to help the conversation.
You can certainly further that.
Harold Whitehouse is a fixture in this community. We have a bridge named after him in the South End because he was a South Ender, a lifelong South Ender. I think that that's really important to remember. I just say I grew up in a split level. I understand the complications of a split level and the challenges of it. I'm not a huge fan of them for that reason. I think there are ways to honor people without necessarily keeping their houses there forever. But I think it's really important to honor the neighborhood. And I think that that's really a critical piece here. I think that hearing from the neighbors is going to be an important part of this process. And I've been down this street multiple times. I also understand the challenges with this particular lot and elevation. So I think that is a concern as well, is elevations and how that impacts anything, say you do remove the house, how it impacts anything you could build there and how that reflects on neighboring homes. Yeah.
I don't think I have anything to add that I haven't said about other more contemporary homes that are dotted here and there in the district. We had this conversation about the one on South Street, which at least wasn't being completely demolished. And I understand your point that there are other houses in Portsmouth that are this house.
We wouldn't be losing this genre.
We wouldn't be losing it. However, this is the only one that's protected. Those are not protected. And maybe some of them will stay in their original shape.
Actually, I've renovated a few Elwyn Park, and some of them are just lovely. One was made out of pink granite. We did an addition, and
and that's lucky, but it's not guaranteed. It's
there are
not
hundreds
assured.
of them, I would say, in this.
But that's this is the only one in the district, and I'm in charge of the district. I'm not in charge of Elwyn Park, and I'm not in charge of anywhere else. And this is the only one here, and it is part of the fabric of the district. It was not only was it lived in by someone who was important to our town, it was built by this person. It's not as if George Washington came and, slept in it for a little while. Harold Whitehouse built this with his hands. And I think that needs to be honored. And in addition to the uniqueness of having this structure within the district, I think we need to take the long view. When the Portsmouth Advocates came in and they did their survey, I think they were charged with thinking about the district as something that started from 16 whatever or 17 whatever to 1850. And everything else was considered contemporary and not worthy. But we're 40 years on from there, and the people who are going to inherit our work are 50 years and 100 years and 200 years if we're lucky. And this house should be there for those people.
But as a museum, it's not really,
You would say, so would you say that the house next door to it, is that a museum?
No. It's a nice, beautiful little house that's in character with the district.
So we're judging whether the house has historic value and should be protected as part of the neighborhood based on the
personality,
based on the quality of the building, the usability of the building. I mean, what's the criteria? Because there are a lot of buildings in the South End. I'm thinking of one on Marcy Street across from the Candy House that are tiny and not very practical. and difficult to work in and difficult to live in. They're straight up and down. You couldn't retire in them if you couldn't go up and down stairs. A lot of these buildings are not useful for what someone might want to use today. Do we allow them to be torn down? I don't think so.
Well, those, because I've worked a lot on that, and I know I've worked on that little tiny house with a garage in the front, and people have lived there very happily, but that building is kind of in context with its neighbors, whereas this is completely out of context with its neighbors. It's on a very large piece of property, and it would kind of just be a monument to, and I loved Harold. I knew him well. I had many a lunch with him, and he's known him for 40 years, and he took the house apart, and they bought it with contents, and they found homes for all his printing equipment, and, there's no lack of respect for Harold coming from this end of the table. It's just more a realistic look at, this piece of property, and are there other ways to honor him?
If you take Harold out of the equation, I can't see protecting this, but Harold is in the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard your argument for knocking it down. You kind of said, we're proposing knocking it down. What do you think? What's your argument?
Well, the argument is that it's not a building that's really easy to renovate. And if we did renovate it, we'd probably completely change the exterior, and then you'd sort of lose the sense. If it gets preserved in situ with the same siding and windows and architectural details, then it's not a terribly, useful or livable building. And there are other ways to honor, the building that I did on the corner of Howard and Pleasant Street. That was the original printing press, and it was a different building at that point. And a new building was put there, but there's a plaque, another one of those signs, just like Harold has a sign on the bridge by Sanders. There are other ways of honoring it without taking the structure that's completely out of context with the fabric of this neighborhood, and just preserving it.
But you say it's not livable.
Well, it's livable, yeah. Yeah. But any building is livable.
Right.
But you have to weigh the value of, Harold's legacy against this building. And I don't think that's where his legacy is necessarily, is in this building. It's what he did in the town, and how he was honored in the town. And his writings, they're at the Athenaeum, and there are other ways to honor his legacy than taking this.
You might say that Harold's probably safe at this point.
What's that?
He's probably safe in terms of making his mark and being remembered.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, I didn't know Harold at White House very well. What would he say if he were sitting in the audience and he was living in the Cape across the way, and somebody came in and said this building had to go because it wasn't the right era of, and it didn't fit exactly into.
But you're asking what he would think, but we're looking at what the ordinance says. And the ordinance, yeah.
Well,
But you were asking me how this ties into his legacy, and that's why I asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
If Harold
Was he known best for building this ranch house, or was he known best for his commitment to this community and all the work that he did on the boards and his writings and his stories? And yeah, there's someone who was a friend of his.
As a preservation professional who has to deal with the conflicts of preserving the recent past, I will have to stand up for this building, even if it so-called doesn't fit in with its surroundings. If you look at the property, if the tax map that you've given us, there are plenty of properties around that have big lots.
Mm-hmm.
So having a big lot and a house on it is not totally out of character. but it is such a good example of what it is. And if we were to just cut off, say, the historic district only goes up to 1945 and stops there, then what good does that do for any future generation? Time doesn't stop then. History doesn't stop then. And the reason that we love the South End and we love our historic district and even the rest of Portsmouth is because of the many layers of history that we have and the many layers of architectural fabric that is there. And if this were falling down, if it had been messed with a bunch of times and didn't have a lot of integrity, had vinyl siding and all this stuff, I'd say, fine. It's not really a good example anymore of what it was. But it's not. It has its original siding and it has its original design, and so all of that being a good example of what it is, and I appreciate that a split level isn't very convenient to live in, but there are plenty of other series of houses, that smaller colonial houses have really short ceilings. They're not easy to live in either. So to me, that's not a good enough argument. And I'm not going to be able to easily give up this building. And that's just me, because it covers 2 out of the 3 criteria of really assessing significance, which is it's a good example of its type of building, of its design, and there was someone significant who built it and lived here. So
Can I get some feedback from other members of the board?
absolutely.
I'll go. When I moved here in '76, I rented the house across the street from it
Oh, yeah.
and lived at 32 Humphrey for a year and a half, rented, yep. And I always thought, and I knew Harold, and he came to our parties and things like that, but it was a house that didn't seem to fit in the neighborhood. It reminded me of suburban Pennsylvania, where I grew up in, and there are a lot of split levels in that. And I thought it was not characteristic of the neighborhood and all the houses around it. I think Harold is not known for the house. I think he's known for amazing other things. And so that to give this house a special step up because Harold lived there, I don't think Harold would want that. I think he would rather be known for the many things he did with the council in the city. So it's interesting it's now come around 50 years. And I still look at it as a house that doesn't belong there.
Please.
I'll be transparent. I'm on the fence right now about what I probably need to process this after tonight, but what the thoughts that are going through my mind. Well, and I also grew up in almost the exact same house in Dover Point. I don't fancy that type of house currently. And I see it's out of context comparatively. However, this is the preserved historic district, and I also I actually didn't know who Harold Whitehouse was until this very moment in time. But I went to Europe in September, and blanking on who it was, but now it's just a blank piece of land that it was like, here's who someone I think it was like, give me a minute, I'm having a senior moment, but who it was, but it was I felt like it was unfortunate that the house wasn't there. So what might not feel significant right now, fast forward 50 years, it felt really sad when we were standing there looking at this plot of land that the house was gone. And
where was this? It was some place when you were traveling.
In Europe. I'm saying it was a significant person in hindsight now, or and I'm hearing that this was a prominent person. So I do think a house like this is livable. So I don't agree with that statement. Lots of people live in houses like this it's not run down or falling down. I think it's a preference to change it. And it is within our historic districts, and it's a piece of the history. So those are my comments. I don't have a strong opinion, because I do also see that it's out of context with the neighborhood. However, we want to preserve the evolution of time, even though we all have preferences. I'm saying I don't prefer the state of the house either, but I think it is a symbol of the time period and the history, and then for that reason, it is very unique in our character district. And I think if we look at any other house in the historic district, we don't just assume it can be demolished for preferences, right? So those are my 2 cents on it at this moment.
Mr. Adams?
I'm too old. I'm way too old. I built these. I don't see anything special about them. And so that means that all we've got is Harold. And I don't see the connection of Harold to this thing because I liked Harold. I never really warmed up to split levels. Again, I think that Harold is a safe element in the community in that his presence far exceeds the value of this. And I don't see how this fits into the neighborhood. And that's really, all the jokes aside, I don't see this contributing to the neighborhood. We have some modern-ish buildings nearby, but they're derivative buildings. They're buildings that are comfortable in the architecture of the community. They're not this, which is a variant, half in and half out of the ground. I do feel, on the one hand, you make the livability thing. I don't think that word was used correctly. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think it was more to the point when you said that it was difficult to make modifications to the house and maintain the spirit and character of the house, because it's a challenge. I got that. I also see, maybe not the largest lot, and I don't think lot size matters, but it's a big lot, and I don't see how the neighborhood will suffer from that. I don't think they benefit one way or the other in terms of Harold living there. I think it's what value the house can bring to the rest of the neighborhood. Harold will always have lived there, regardless of what that thing is. I never had dinner at Harold's house. I never spent any time with him there. So I don't make that connection. And I appreciate listening to this thing, and you could be right. I'm not saying I'm right. It's just where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to. Do you need
Can I
to-
add something about
Yeah.
that? So I didn't know this was Harold's house. I know where Harold Whitehouse Bridge is. I know a lot about what he's done in the community because we did a lot to honor him in the last several years. I also don't know where Eileen Foley lived or Evelyn Sorrell. I don't know where their homes are. You could argue that they made a much more substantial impact on this community in some ways. So we don't usually set aside houses for local leaders and recognize them. It's usually national level leaders that we recognize their houses and their impact. Over time, I think that we recognize local leaders usually in other ways, by naming streets after them or
the bridge,
the Von Mall, right? Like we name streets and locations after them rather than preserving their houses usually for the long term, unless they did things like sign the Declaration of Independence. So I think it's important to have some context here around the history of this, and I don't think very many people in the community, except people who were close to Harold, would know that this was his house, especially going forward several generations. It's very unlikely somebody's going to install a plaque out front to say that. So I think that, to me, is the historical context here. There's a totally different discussion, though, about preservation of the identity of the district and what it means for a district to grow over time. And I really think it's important to know where the people who live on Humphreys Court, what they think. Honestly, I think that's, to me, the most important element here.
Which is why I would now like to open up discussion so we can hear from the public. So if you have If anyone from the public would like to speak to the work session, please come to the podium and introduce yourself. And
hi, my name is Ben St. John. I'm the abutter directly to the east at 54 rather. And so Harold was our neighbor for 20 plus years, a good guy, unique neighbor. And the house, I agree, it doesn't really belong in the neighborhood. It's out of character. And I'd say Harold made it part of the neighborhood. So when we look at that house, we think of Harold for sure. And we've grown fond of that particular area for what it is. But in the end, you know, I think as time goes on, we have to look at the neighborhood for what it is and put something there that might reflect Harold's wishes, because nothing stays up forever, right? Something that works within the neighborhood. I think we're all in favor of that. But it has to be reasonable in scope and size. That's one of the last good-sized properties in the South End on our street. And to overwhelm it with a large building or a two-family or something like this, I think takes away from the character of the neighborhood. The street flows very nicely with the footprint that exists there now. And if the applicants would look at it for what it is and say, okay, the house isn't practical, we would honor Harold by building a house that's congruent with the neighborhood and reflects some of his values, because he served on the school board for 30 years. He was part of this group and other planning groups and police and traffic and so on. He would want to make sure that Humphreys Court stays cool, that the neighborhood is congruent, and if you walk up and down our street, it's a gem. And not just the buildings, but the neighbors. So it's super important when we're looking at this situation. The whole neighborhood is in, the whole street is in. We all want to see something that makes sense. And we certainly want to welcome the Snovers to come and establish themselves there in a way that's congruent with the neighborhood. And, you know, when we buy a house in the South End, we know from the start that there are parameters by which we have to abide. We went through them too, in order to put windows and a deck and the things that we wanted to have. And we were told to operate a certain way. And so we just ask for the same consideration for the Snovers, and that they get the wishes that they'd like to have, but in a manner that's respectful of the neighborhood. Yeah? Thanks.
anyone else?
I'm Jamie Baker. I live across the street at 75 Humphreys Court. I have no knowledge of the sort of your purview and the historic district and exactly how that all is supposed to work. For the record, I just wanted to mention that Harold did adore his house, and that it was very special to him, and that he would be devastated that it was being demolished, and that my understanding from his children that it was represented to them when the house was sold was that it would not be demolished. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's from his children. And I just would want to say that for Harold, so that he was proud of his big yard, and he was proud of his house that he built. And if progress needs to occur, that's fine. But for the record, wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak?
I'm Andrea St. John. I am an abutter as well at 54 Humphreys Court, and a friend of Harold's who would regularly visit him in his home, which he took an immense amount of pride in. And because he and his wife built it, he told me that story many times. And I do think it has some historic value, because it is a working class person who lived and built a home at a time when Portsmouth was a working class affordable town. So it is representative of a very unique and now long past era of history. I also want to speak on behalf of my neighbors who have unanimously been in opposition to anything large being built on that property for the various reasons that have been mentioned by our neighbors in the zoning board, which has to do with the fact that this is a very popular throughway for children and parents bringing their kids to Little Harbor School. And so that access and visibility around that corner is very important. It is a densely built street already, so there's concern around having space and green space left on in the neighborhood. So if your issue is, if you want to respect the opinions of the current neighbors, you can, again, just look at the records from the zoning board and the number of people who are here tonight. Thank you.
Sorry, you just have to be at the microphone.
That was just with regard to the sort of the existing house, nothing with regard to the proposal that is on the table for tonight.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Sure.
Can I ask you a question? You were speaking what you believe Harold's wishes were. What is your personal preference as an abutter? Besides the size and massing that I'm hearing, but like.
I don't think I'm qualified to talk to the historical.
I mean, like, would you prefer for the house to stay, or would you prefer for it to be demolished and a new house to be built to match the character?
I don't think it's fair for me to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Do you have someone online?
Oh, we do? Okay,
Yep.
great.
Darcy Davidson, if you can hear me, you are now allowed to speak.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm the wife of Bob Snover, and thank you for allowing me to speak. When you do your site walk, I encourage you to, I would like to know when that is, because I would like to have you walk through the house. I think it's really important to understand that, yes, Harold built this house with his wife, and he was a print man working in printing presses for most of his life until he got let go and he went to the Navy Yard. He gave a lot of himself, but maybe his carpentry skills were not up to par with all his other skills. And so I would encourage you to make an appointment. We have tenants in there now to see what the house is like, and it will need some improvement over time if we're not able to take the house down. It will cost a lot to maintain or bring it up to new windows and so many other things. It is paramount that you understand where this house is after being standing for, however many years it's been, 40 plus, to appreciate that when we purchased it, we were not thinking we purchased a historical home that was due to be preserved versus buying something that we could, a plot of land that could be built into something that would fit into a historic neighborhood. That was our plan. So, I just would please include a tour of the home with the site walk. And thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Yes, if more people from the public.
Hi, I'm Rachel Kershan, and I live at 33 Humphreys Court. I can't say that, I think this is a beautiful looking house, but the thing that keeps striking me is that the condition of the house, the structure of the house, this was all known when it was purchased. So it shouldn't be a big surprise of what it looks like, and it shouldn't have been taken for granted that it could be torn down. And I just think that needs to be borne in mind. And I think I agree with everything that has been said. Is my concern is that, you know, we're used to a certain size house on that lot, and I just want to see, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be torn down or it shouldn't be modified, but I think the big concern is what, if that does happen, what is going to be put there, and is it going to be size-wise in character with what we've all come to know, the open space, and the size of what's there now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public speak to the work session? No one else online?
Nope.
All right. Are there any other comments?
Just one quick comment. I don't think we're ready to look at a proposal.
Yep.
It's funny because I submitted this application last October for just this discussion, and I was told that we couldn't come before you until we had things that we were proposing to put on the site. And so now,
I mean,
October, November, December, January, it's 6 months later, and a lot of, you know, other work has been done, and it's just a little disappointing. I just want to make that clear.
And I think that it is correct for you to bring something here, because we can't make a decision, even if we have the discussion of the demolition. We still, those of us who are fine with the demolition are not going to say grant a demolition without knowing what's going to replace it. So you're fine in what you've proposed here. So I do want to actually open it up to have anyone have initial reactions to the massing and the layout and everything that has been proposed for the new construction.
I just wanted to say that the only way, I mean, for clarity's sake, it makes no sense to really judge something and if we're still hung up on step one. Unless step one includes a compromise which saves a portion of the house. So I just feel like we can continue, and I have thoughts about the proposed, but, you know,
Well, can I ask
we're
a
not
question?
completely 100% know where we are. I think a site walk is paramount.
I think there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing going on. So my question, because I'm not saying I would support this yet, but if it were to be approved for demolition, there is definitely I don't know if it's unanimous, but very popular sentiment that the massing of what's proposed is significant and not in alignment with the neighborhood.
But
forgive me if I
could
was
argue that a little bit, yeah.
Well, that's not what I heard from the
No,
neighbors.
from the neighbors, but also.
Saying that's what I heard from the neighbors. So my question is, if a compromise of reduced massing, is that a project that would still be pursued? Because that's the other question, because it's a two-family house that you're proposing, and if that doesn't make sense and you wouldn't continue with the, I guess that's what and forgive me if I stepped away to the bathroom and some of that was spoken to in the beginning.
No, we didn't get started.
Okay.
until you
But I
came
guess
in.
just, how come a two-family house, would you continue if it needed to be smaller, and massing is the other, that's what I'm saying, chicken
Not
egg?
necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, we're jumping the gun, and
Yeah.
that's the problem I have with this.
Okay.
You're speaking for the group.
Which group?
I feel like you're speaking for the group.
Oh, no, I was speaking for myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand that. I said if I were to support this, I was echoing, and I was just trying to understand a little bit of the
You know, and I think we've put a lot of thought into, you know, it's definitely a bigger structure, but we've totally within the zoning. We're creating as big a buffer as we can possibly do between the closest properties. Again, this figure ground in terms of what we're looking at, the two structures are, in terms of spacing, even if you look at on that north side, where it's much more dense, there's even more space between the two structures on this lot than there is in a lot of other parts of the street. And that, that we can't, decide before, that we're gonna say we're gonna reduce this whole thing. The neighbors have an input. This is the historic district. The board also has it, and we have our presentation. And I don't think it's appropriate right now for us to, start to.
I didn't mean to present it like that.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what needs to happen. I was just trying to understand the scenarios, like A, B, C, was that a possible scenario? But it sounds like we can't answer that.
What I'm hearing from the neighbors is there's a lot of concern around massing and a large structure going back in this space. And when I look at the elements you've given us, my personal opinion, I'm looking at this, I don't know many places in the South End where we have 3-car garages. And that's, I can understand why the neighbors would be concerned about that. You're allowed to build, a single family with an ADU by right in the city. You're not necessarily allowed to build a duplex everywhere in the city.
It is allowed in this district.
It is general residence, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
you have to meet the zoning.
But it's not terribly, this type of two-building structure that's a duplex is not terribly consistent in this neighborhood or even in the district. When you see duplexes in this district, you usually see like a house that's subdivided with a duplex side by side in one structure. You don't see these separate houses unless you have a house and an ADU. And the ADU is necessarily usually smaller. Even if it's above a garage unit, it's not usually a 3-car garage unit. So I think that's what I'm hearing is having structures that are consistent with what the neighborhood houses look like and in size particularly and in style is what the neighbors are concerned about. And there's also some concern about losing this house. I'm hearing that too. But
what?
Some concern I'm also hearing about losing this house, that some of the neighbors really like this house.
Hearing's bad.
But size is a major concern. Yeah. And
that's why we're having a work session.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I think it's going well.
Yeah.
If the argument for demolishing this house is that it doesn't fit into the context of the neighborhood, then I think we need to be really sure that the house that replaces it absolutely goes into the context of the neighborhood. And I'm not, although granted, we don't have anywhere near the detail that we would have if this were, for more fleshed out. But I hear what the neighbors are saying, and I agree with their concerns. I particularly like the point that our neighbor made about the working class nature of this home, and how before it was gentrified, this entire neighborhood was very much working class, and this is sort of like a last physical vestige of that.
Actually, the north side was. The south side is quite elegant, I must say. The south side of Humphreys is quite elegant houses, not working class houses. Yeah.
I'm referring to the district as a whole.
Yeah.
We can aspire. Can jump in here?
Yeah.
I think, I hate to couple it, general thought, I hate to think that Harold's being used as a straw man in the argument for something that I don't want in my neighborhood. Having said that, I don't think that's what's happening, just I worry. To me, a 3-car garage in the street is not much of a deal. I don't think I want to trade anything for that. And my thought, just again, maybe jumping ahead, because everybody's starting in a different place. But I'd hate to think that the applicant was worried about how we're going to deal with the massing of the uphill portion of this thing when it's the garage portion of this thing that's really the killer. I think if it were mine, and I would have free hand, I would run the driveway up the left-hand most side, water side of the lot, and bring the cars into the underside of the building where they could control grade and park, much the same way that part of Harold's house is under below grade, that part of the garage would be below grade also. It would move it off the street, it would make it not part of the front facade, and it would give you a chance to make a tasty little ADU or duplex out of what remained. Everybody's trying to solve the problem different ways.
Yes. No, and this is, like you said, this is what a work session is intended to be, so you.
No, I
lots of
agree.
different voices. Yeah, don't think that all the work that you have done is a waste of time, because
No.
this is what, we did ask for you to bring this. I do think that we need a site walk, and to walk around, not only to see the current house and its condition, but also to try and visualize and imagine what could replace it and what would be.
Yeah, and also how we use the site, because I put a lot of thought into, both the the southwest corner and the northeast corner are the slopiest parts of the lot. And then it kind of, as that curve, it kind of naturally comes down. So I think it would be good to do a site walk to see how the best way to kind of access and set massing on the property. Yep.
Yeah, and to look and see what's there now, and, everybody is coming to this from a different place and with a different opinion, and we could sit there and argue, significance of this all day. I'll just say that I did a TED Talk about 10 years ago talking about why it's important to preserve the recent past, but I also understand that everybody has their own opinions here, and this is what this commission is for, and we all come at it with different understandings of what should be preserved and how we preserve our district. So if there are no other comments or anything, this is still work session, so nothing is set in stone, and we will work with Isaac and the homeowners to set a site walk. It will be published. We'll make sure that the neighbors all know, and
Brownies.
we can all, we'll all have a house party on Harold's.
Do you usually still do it on the day of the meeting, or before the meeting, or no?
Whenever is
Okay,
most
whenever it's
convenient.
best to- yeah.
Sometimes it's more convenient that way, but if it's not convenient for whoever's there,
So pick a day that you were meeting otherwise that afternoon. Okay, yep.
Yep.
Is it appropriate to?
Please.
Because
Yep,
I
we
didn't
haven't
talk
posted
to
anything.
the sort of Jamie Baker. I didn't talk to sort of the actual proposal that was put out there. It was just that initial part. I just really echo what you said with regard to the way that it's currently set up. There is no house on the street, like facing the street. It's the main house is sort of set way back, and then you have the garage apartment like directly in front of that, in what would be the front yard. And so there's just no example of that anywhere in the south end whatsoever. And then so in that, like, you also go to the massing of the two of them, and they're both pretty much the exact same size, but for the slope of the lot. So aside from the demolition issue, I just want to be clear that there's been like this maximalist approach to this property since it was purchased with regard to subdivision and like everything you could do with it. And I think this first proposal is like more of that. Like, what can we get? How big can we make it? So I just want to put everybody on notice of that.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are you going for any variances or anything?
No.
This is all within zoning?
Well, it's a 10,000 square foot lot, and so we're doing a concerted effort, and
Okay.
we will not be asking for any variances.
I just wanted to make sure that was
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
I think you might need a variance with regard to putting a garage in front of a house, but I don't know.
I don't think so.
All right, anyone else? All right, we'll
Move to
continue
continue?
this, thank you.
Second.
All
Aye. And then
you all
once,
very
we
much.
won't set a date for the continuance until we've had the sidewalk.
Sure.
Yeah,
So just continue to a future meeting.
yeah,
at
if
this
it works out
Not
for
necess-
next
Not
month,
necessarily
then.
next month, but when.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Spirited.
All right, so it doesn't look like anybody else has come to speak to, 112 Annex Street or the TD Bank Building, so I guess we'll need a motion to continue those to next month.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the last thing to discuss, hopefully you all got my email about the, we did receive our CLG grant for the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions for training. So I sent out the link to the camp website, and I was hoping, so that if you click on it and look at the camp menu, there's a large variety of topics. I think we can choose 6, and so this will be an all-day event that we'll host at some point whenever we find a day where all of us can be there, probably like a Saturday or something, since it will have to be all day.
And we could do like 6 in that same day, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so they'll come and do training, it'll be an all-day thing, we can open it up to, members of the other land use boards, which I think would be helpful, to have, members of the planning board and the zoning board come and, learn more about how the historic district works, and, so I was hoping that everyone could pick their, sort of their top 5, and we could pull those together and figure out what, what the majority of people would like to see. I think they all look very helpful and interesting.
You're a professional, though.
It's true. I mean, this is like, this is my happy place. But, so does anybody have any questions on that or thoughts?
So as a group, we need to narrow down to 6.
Not right now, but yes, I think that we want. Yeah.
Can I say, I struggled with finding what were the topics.
Okay.
I found myself in, I just highlighted some sentences that were blunt and put in bold, and I pasted them on the email back to you, but I don't know that they were all topics.
Okay.
You had to work your way down, I saw that too, and for the first couple times I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
But there's another way, where they had a whole list of them.
Being old is really hard, and I didn't get it.
Well, I'm there
There
with you.
is, I'm sorry, there is a, one of the links has a whole PDF.
One of the links.
And
Right.
there's a
says
condensed
camp-
list, and then
it
it
says
breaks them all
menu.
out.
Could you try it again
I
for me
will.
then? I'll do a better
I
job.
think what you sent me was fine.
I would love to think that, but I have no reason to believe that.
Okay.
Other than you saying
I will
it.
send a more specific
Don't
link
feel
to
bad.
this.
It took me a lot of shots to find that too.
Yeah, it was tricky.
I've got, I mean, I still have other things to do.
So.
They made it hard. Someone should talk to their
Yeah,
website.
someone should
to
train
decide.
them about.
All right, they'll hear it.
So there's that, and we will, I just wanted to put that out there for us to start thinking about, and start thinking about when we want to plan this. I don't know if there are months or seasons that people are like, a summer Saturday is not gonna work for me, is a fall, I have 2 teenage boys, there's never a good time for me, but I will make it work, and if there are any things where people are gonna be out of town, or,
I'm not gonna live forever at stage, so sooner the better.
so just let me know, and we'll work with Susan and Larry to get, their input as well, and,
Could they set it up within a month or 2?
I have to, probably by the summer, I have to, we have to reach out to them and figure it out. I know the city has to officially sign off on receiving the grant. But then as soon as that happens, we can just reach out to them and set it up.
Certainly.
It'd be great. It's one wonderful opportunity.
Summer. Yeah.
I've done a few things like this in the past, and they always have been more valuable than I even thought.
Yeah, great, yeah. Great, and then the other thing is, the other part of our grant is that we did get the money to hire someone to do the survey of the Islington Street corridor, so we get some more basic information about all the buildings there. Will be really helpful, so we just have to work on, and I'll have to work with the planning department on pulling together a request for proposals for that work.
Well, nice job getting that.
Good for you.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah, I'm
for
excited.
all of us,
I didn't,
yeah.
I didn't see any drafts or anything. I thought you were looking for some help, you know.
Independent.
And it's like you're teamed up in high school for a science project and the smartest kid just takes over.
I told everybody what to do.
All right,
We got A's.
Yes.
No, we will, the training thing will be a group effort. I'm not gonna presume to choose all the topics, so that'll be fine. Great. Oh,
I'll
fantastic.
email you my
I'll send you
tested,
mine.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can, I think, we can discuss that by email through Isaac, or, something, that we're not violating anything. All right, anything else that anybody needs to bring up or discuss? All right, then, I thought it was gonna be much longer, but we are. It is before 10, so I'll take a motion to
Motion?
adjourn.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.